Welcome to the Safina Society podcast, everyone.
Welcome to the Mad Mamluks.
What people are really looking for is Jannah on earth, where you can do anything, nobody has an evil intent behind it, and only good things ever happen, and there's never any harm resulting from it. And it's an immature point of view.
You're moving from one type of imprisonment to another, and from one type of freedom to another.
Like, if I just read some Quran, this will solve the problem. For some people, it's a lot deeper than that.
These things are habits, right? So habits with triggers all over the place.
If a person really seeks, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will provide that guidance. That's the thing.
Assalamu alaikum, everybody. You're listening to the Safina Society podcast featuring the Mad Mamluks. We've got the usual crew at the round table here for our second session or post-lunch session. And for this session, we're going to do a little bit of an intro on where and how the Safina Society podcast started, just because we did that in the last session with the Mad Mamluks. So we'll start off with that, and then we'll get to our main topic of the day.
Yeah, so I'll kick it off. And for the listeners, just want to apologize for the sound that sounds like a fireplace. I just want you to imagine that you're sitting in front of a fireplace. We have some weird wind sound we can't get rid of. So to give a short history of the Safina Society podcast, how we kind of started was almost randomly. It wasn't really thought out as much as I would like to think it was. And I think it was really just the will of Allah. And so Saad and I, we worked similar schedules at work. And I worked in a job that I absolutely hated for approximately 2 years. And during that time, I was commuting home almost at the exact same time as Saad. And I would call him and complain all day about my, the nonsense work that I was doing in software development. He worked in a similar field in UX, and we those discussions slowly turned from work discussions to discussions about philosophy, aqidah, politics, fiqh, all these different things. And eventually, I said, there were a lot of them were very comical as well. I was like, maybe we should just start recording our driving discussions. And then that sort of never came to light exactly, but one day, and I at the same time started taking classes at Safina. I met Dr. Shadi and Ilyas and a lot of the Safina crew, and that's where Dr. Shadi also had a similar idea of starting to record something, some sort of podcast, an idea, and that's where I sort of approached him and said, hey, let's just start recording whatever it may be. We don't even have to think about a topic. Let's just sit down, put a mic in front of us, and start talking. So that's exactly what we did. If you listen to our first episode, it was haphazardly done in Dr. Shadi's office in the Masjid with a mic that we passed back and forth. I think we had somebody in the background too. I don't remember who it was, but
That was Ali, I think.
Was it Ali? Somebody was in the background, and I've just had frustrations about a number of issues, ranging from gender to feminism to atheism and all these different issues that we sort of never got to talk about. And a lot of times we heard lectures by scholars on these topics, but normal lay people like myself and Saad, we also wanted to speak to scholars about these issues, but we sort of never got to talk in sort of an open mind, an open forum discussion. And so it kind of went from Dr. Shadi and I doing 1 or 2 episodes, and then eventually, in a couple episodes, I was like, we need some help, doing this type of dialogue. I was like, we need either, we definitely need a sound person because our sound is trash. Because Saad listened to it, he's like, your sound is terrible. He's like, you got to get some mics or something. And and at the same time, I put up a Facebook post for getting someone to do research and sort of being like a think tank. And that's where Ilyas actually reached out and he said, I'd be interested in doing something like that. And so that's kind of how Ilyas came on board, and instead of having him just do research, I was like, hey, just show up and we'll just start recording. And then he came on, then Saad came on, and then it sort of just turned into the Safina Society podcast. And even when we sort of had guests on, like I know our first guest was Sheikh Rami, it wasn't organized like, we called Sheikh Rami and said, hey, do you want to be on the Safina Society podcast? He just happened to come to NBIC, and we were like, hey, you want to record something? And he was like, sure, this is cool. And then we just started recording for 3 hours, and it was awesome. And over time, this is really been less about having listeners listen in. It's really just the four of us just having a therapy session talking about a lot of issues that we encounter, and other folks listen in. And so the goal of the Safina Society podcast has been from the very beginning, and Dr. Shadi can correct me if I'm wrong, is really supposed to be it's supposed to bring people into the classes for Safina Society. It's sort of an extension to the school itself, and trying to teach in a very open format, sort of somewhat of an entertaining manner, the principles of the Deen, right? And so Dr. Shadi explained it in the last session that this first season was sort of breaking down ideas and thoughts and deconstructing arguments of, that are kufr arguments, or that are arguments of, that oppose Islam, and deconstructing some of those. And the second season was really the argument for the existence of God, and it wasn't just that, but we tried to focus a lot on kalam, cosmological argument, on the idea of logic, the idea of scientism, materialism, how to break down and understand these topics. And I think the third season we're going to start going into what is, now that we've proven the existence of God, how do you get from God to the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam and to Islam itself? And so I think we kind of, I didn't know much about the Mad Mamluks or even other podcasts out there. I know I had listened to Joe Rogan before. I had listened to some podcasts here and there. I didn't know much about podcasting, so it was very haphazard the way we kind of started. And when I kind of first learned about the Mad Mamluks, for me it was I really liked it. I was like, okay, it's definitely a different flavor to what we do, but I think it's a very essential element. You guys, interview a lot of different voices with a lot of different people, and I think the existence of both podcasts, I was like, I want people to bring. The way I saw it is you guys bring in this element of interviewing a lot of other people, bringing in different voices, and the way I saw ours is sort of this it is kind of an echo chamber, but it's sometimes it's important to have that voice where people can cling on to, okay, these guys.
MSNBC is not an echo chamber, right?
No,
so anything where you have set of beliefs and you insist on those principles and you don't allow them to be contradicted, and someone doesn't like it, they try to rail you as an echo chamber.
Yeah.
Right, so CNN is not basically the same ideas. The New York Times is not bringing you the same ideas, and if you contradict it, they completely shut you out. So I would say people have beliefs and positions, right? And if they don't like it, they call you an echo chamber, right? So that's basically.
Did you guys get started after we had Dr. Shadi on our podcast?
It was around the same time.
Because I don't know if you guys know the story of when we invited Dr. Shadi on. It was a funny affair because we had a date scheduled with Dr. Shadi at a time, and he showed up literally 3 hours later.
Really? Oh my gosh!
3 hours later.
You're kidding me.
We're waiting, just talking, and Dr. Shadi, we're texting back and forth with Dr. Shadi, and he's like, yeah, about 15 minutes, 20 minutes, max 15 minutes.
You know what it might be? It might be the time zone thing. I didn't realize you were already an hour back.
Maybe. It seems weird that somebody that's sort of close to us would be at a different time. Yeah. And it's a weird thing, right? California, you understand, right?
Yeah.
All the sun is at a different position.
Yeah.
I don't even know where Chicago really is.
Yeah,
yeah, of course.
Yeah. I didn't realize I was that late. My apologies, man.
So, and then we were joking about when we finally got Dr. Shadi on, we were like, this must be how, some of the ulama train their students. They make sure they come very late, but let them know that, hey, the class starts when the teacher arrives.
No, I totally didn't realize.
No,
that
it's
much.
not meant for you to apologize. It's meant to. We were discussing training this. It's not meant for you to apologize.
It's great because I remember one time I was telling you, I'm sorry that I'm coming late when I was doing one of the classes for Safina, and you were like, no, the class starts when the teacher arrives.
We recorded with you the day before the election.
I remember that. Yeah, I remember that. Was it the actual night before?
No, we recorded on the Monday night. The election was Tuesday.
Yeah, and I was from a long time before. You and Alex and I, we were like, Trump has got this in his back pocket because he's got the street, he's got the guys, he's got people. And Hillary had nothing except the Clinton News Network supporting her and the New York Times. And these institutional support she had. She had no on-the-ground support.
Sheikh Amr was our guy. He was saying it from the beginning.
Yeah.
Trump is going to win. Trump
got
is going to
all
win.
the momentum.
Repeating it. I'm like, no, man, you don't know. Did you see the numbers?
Yeah.
Go on 538.com. You don't know anything. You don't know statistics. He's like, shit. You can say whatever you want. He's going to win.
Yeah, so I mean that's. I think you guys had Dr. Shadi on. We had already done about like 3 or 4 episodes, and then you guys
That was in the middle of the first season.
Yeah. It was like the beginning, sort of the beginning of the first season that we had kind of started, and then so. But you guys don't have like seasons or anything like that. You guys kind of just keep going, right?
We're not that professional, bro. You guys are a whole different level.
Well, you also have
That's actually harder to
That's
do
hard.
it.
Well,
to do
yeah,
it
I mean,
just
but that's
consistently.
something that we're trying
We
to
need
integrate.
breaks. We're like, let's go on a
We get
season.
exhausted from
Yeah.
talking about
Yeah.
this stuff because we're just like, all right. I know I get burnt out after a season. I'm just like, all right.
we get tired too. So we have some other people on our team. We're integrating new podcasters from different countries. We want to set up a network of like-minded individuals who are talking about things that are, really relevant to conservative-minded Muslims.
So you have Ismail now, Noor.
No, they are not. We have people who are in Australia. They're
Who's that?
Is that the Boys in the Cave guy?
Boys in the Cave.
They're not HT, are they?
Wait, but they have their own.
Isn't that their own podcast though? No.
No, they're
They're part of the Mad Mamluks.
So
they're
the-
part of
The
they're
network.
they're
So
a
Boys
separate
in the
pod-
Cave is something that.
MMPs.
So how is it related to you guys?
So they're more of like
They
so
idolize
they're
us.
younger, right?
the youth version.
So you guys
They're,
are like Bill
they're,
Simmons.
they're younger kids, so there's a more
Grantland?
of a learning curve for
He's got the ring
because
in.
one of the complaints we get from a lot of our listeners is that they can't keep up with our terms and our discourse. It just goes over their head. So one of the things that we're working on is with like Boys in the Cave is that they're able to get younger audiences on. They're able to engage with younger audiences in their language.
So you put their stuff on your website?
No, they're still going to be their own channel. We're just going to be doing a lot of cross
Stuff. Okay.
cross stuff.
So like
Sheikh
they're like
Hammer will go on their podcast and he'll give them the scholarly guidance when they need it. You know,
that's really good.
So
That's good.
And are they doing the same format, like interviews mostly?
yeah.
That's good.
Yeah, so that the point that I was going to make when I was listening to Maureen describe the 2 podcasts, it's almost like you guys are like journalism, like for real. Like you interview people, you get in depth, you ask about, you cover topics, and we're more like the I don't want to use that. We're more like the journal of Safina Society, right? Like I don't even want to call it an academic journal because it's more laid back than that. But that's all we're doing, right? Yeah. So we're very specific to what we're focused on. Where you guys are actually
We're ideological in the sense we want to create our own narrative.
Sure.
We don't. We want to be like how Fox News created a conservative platform and they just kind of forced their way into public discussion.
Yep.
We want to be that for Muslims in the West, where why should we wait for ISNA or ICNA or whatever major organization there is out there to create a platform for conservative Muslims?
and they're not.
And they're not going to. They're just going further to the left. So why wait?
Yeah.
We should get our act together and form our own narrative.
Yeah.
And you also now have a relationship with Muslim Matters. So tell us what's that all about.
So Muslim Matters approached us saying that, hey, look, we don't have a platform. We don't have a podcast. What we want is something what you guys are doing. We're conservative minded like you, and we agree with a lot of what you guys do, and we're very supportive of what you guys are all about. And we said, we'll join you guys, but you guys can't touch our creativity. Like you can't influence us in terms of how we produce the show. Everything is still going to be us. We'll be there as a podcast branch for you. For us, it seemed like a great way of disseminating our material.
So they put your podcast on their website now?
We're in the process of integrating that. It's not as simple as it seems because it's got like all this kind of HTML website talk that needs to be done.
So this is sort of like an alliance more so than anything else.
Yeah, you could say that like that. I mean,
you're creatively independent.
Yeah,
they're not giving you any money, right? So it's an alliance.
Yeah, you could say that. Yeah,
but it was portrayed that they purchased you.
Yeah,
when you own something, that means you pay for it and you dictate it. right?
Yeah, because someone.
So that's not exactly the right term.
Because the words they use we acquired the Mad Mamluks.
Yeah.
Like when
That means
you guys get rid of Mad Mamluks.
That means you guys have a boss.
Right. And
it doesn't seem like that's
I didn't like the
reality,
language in that because a lot of people were confused. Like, hey, wait a second.
We're now affiliated.
You guys
with
sold your whole platform to them for what? And that's not what.
So that's not the right term.
Yeah, I would say it's more of an alliance.
An alliance. Like
Did they just give Maheen a bunch of hats in different colors?
Yeah. Because if you acquire something, you could shut it down.
Right.
They cannot shut you down.
Right.
They can shut. Okay.
So.
And plus, one thing I'd like to add is it was a nice combination because we were always looking for writers for our blog, and they have lots of good writers.
Right, they have
writers. They have like 90 writers.
And look, Muslim Matters gets close to 100,000 hits on their website a month, every month. It's insane the number of traffic that they get.
Yeah.
So for us, it was like, well, you know what? If they're going to stick to their word and not interfere in our production, who we invite, who we don't. They said, hey, can we make suggestions though? Like, can we, say, hey, would you like to invite one of our writers who wrote this piece? Sure.
You can make a suggestion.
It gives us more guests. Right? More guests, and they needed a media-ish outlet. So that's
their main writer, Mubin Ved, is just like an extension of us. He's like our Sayyid Qutb.
Now, when you say conservative, a Qadiani can be conservative.
Yeah.
A Shi'i can be conservative. That term,
again, for the lack of a better term, you just can't.
You could say Sunni though.
Yeah, you could say Sunni, but then those guys who are liberal-minded, they also say Sunni too, right?
No, because Sunni now equals supremacy. So, alhamdulillah, they don't want the term anymore. They're giving
I think that's a small branch of them. But general populace of those who are kind of afraid of portraying their Islam the way mainstream Sunni is, they actually consider, and I think this is the future, man. Unfortunately, with people who are in media, people like Safina Society and even the Mad Mamluks, and they're going to think that we're giving Islam a bad name. To them, we're too hardlined, and because we don't like change, we like something to be static, right? And a lot of people embrace that lack of balance, like the other podcast we were talking about lack of balance. 1 week they like something, that's instability. Yeah. We don't believe in instability, right? So people who don't want to be subjugated to the change and be unstable in their principle, those people are the ones that are extremists now because they're not willing to change with the times. And the times are changing. What's wrong with them, right?
One of these lawyer reviews downgraded Kavanaugh for saying that he was immovable. Right?
Yeah.
He was stiff and immovable in his positions.
I could do a whole hour or 8 on Kavanaugh. Yeah. But the problem with Kavanaugh is, out of the 4 front runners for that seat, and I tweeted about this, he was the worst out of all of them.
Why is that?
Because he doesn't actually have those principles. Definitely, he leans towards the right, but he's a political operative more than like a jurisprudent.
Really?
So he's gonna not vote his conscience at all. So if you take somebody like Amy Coney Barrett, just the female professor from Notre Dame, she's super conservative.
She lost the job,
right wing, but she actually believes in what she's doing.
Yeah.
Right. So if something, it's kind of like what you got with Scalia and what you still get with Thomas sometimes, which is they'll vote their conscience even if it goes against their political leanings, as opposed to someone like Sam Alito, who will just go with whatever his policy leanings are, even if it completely contradicts what he claims to be his jurisprudence.
All right, good.
So Kavanaugh is he's problematic in my eyes.
So
even if you're a conservative.
So with that, I mean, that was a good intro and background.
I don't know how he joined.
I was supposed to. I was supposed to be like the content curator, so I was supposed to like come up with topics for us to talk about, which I did maybe like once. And then after that, Moeen would text me like the day that we were recording and be like, "What are we doing today?" And I'd be like, something's happening in the news with trannies. Let's do that."
Oh no!
Sorry. So we're back. We're back, and we just got a word from our intern that Sim is upstairs putting corn chips on Maheen, who's sleeping.
Yep.
This is what happens. These guys fly out from Chicago, and they end up, one ends up taking a nap, and the other one ends up like pranking him while he's napping. But we still have Sheikh Amr, alhamdulillah, who's
Last
here.
man standing.
He's here. He's dedicated. He's a worker, and he's ready. He's ready to podcast. So Sheikh, how did you get involved with the podcast again? I know that you knew Sim for a while, right?
Yeah. So me and Sim,
But what makes ulama like you?
No, I'm not from amongst the ulama, man. I'm a student and I'm still learning. But the thing is that me and Sim, we used to get together every weekend, Friday, Saturday nights, like clockwork, talking late night all the way till the morning. Sometimes all the way till Fajr. Sometimes, and we had a friend with us who was the original host before Maheen, Muhammad, and he was like, you know what, you guys should just start this podcast, man. You guys just got to go. And one of my cousins had mentioned a podcast to me like 5 years ago. I was like, what's that? So I completely put on the back burner. So anyways, our friend Muhammad's like, man, you guys just forget about what you have. Just go start recording. And it wasn't like we're like, yeah, we just want to do a podcast. What I told Sim and what Sim used to tell me is, what if we recorded this and people could benefit from this? Because we just have late night conversations all night talking about everything. Yeah. Very disconnected, yet very uplifting and very therapeutic, like you guys were talking about, right? Yeah. It's very therapeutic because we understand each other very well. And we used to bounce ideas off, and I was like, you know what, we should just record this. And then we took advice of Muhammad. We don't want to procrastinate anymore. We started recording. And the interesting thing was what I've seen from this productivity, you see things. I've known Sim since he was a child. We knew each other. He's a few years older than me, a year older, 2 years older than me. But what they've become and how they're able to get involved in something, it's as if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala ordained something for us to become productive. And because Sim would always be like, man, you're so lucky you went to study. I was like, dude, don't think that's something that great. You know, it's a big responsibility. He's like, man, he was always trying to be like, dude, I got to be able to do something to give back to the community and this and that. He wasn't even thinking about it. And little by little, as we were growing, and he was, you know, we were talking about this as he has like a good type of OCD where sound quality has to be. I didn't even think about these things. So I used to be learning a lot of things from him and how to market yourself and how to present sound, on how well sound and how clear it should be and how to pay attention to detail, because any little thing, remember we got that Yeti at first, you got the Yeti, and as soon as he listened to it, he was like, man, I don't like the sound. I was like, and we were investing hopes. I was like, yes, you got the blue Yeti. I took the blue Yeti. Yeah. And I was like, whoa, we got it. We got the microphone. But then when he heard it right away, he's like, no, I don't like the sound. And to me, I was like, dude, this is awesome. What are you talking about? This is great.
That's funny. That's exactly like what Moeen happened with me and Moeen. Right? He was like, yeah, what's wrong with it? I was like, no, this is not going to work. The sound is terrible.
Yeah.
Like, he's
and
like,
you need that. You need
work.
those kind of people
it's
to,
like, no, it's not.
It was the same mic, right?
It was in a blue Yeti, but actually he wanted to get a USB mic, and I was like, no, USB mics are, you know, they're weak, like they're not good. We got to get like a legit mic. So
yeah, like I always think it'd be good if you just have a headphone with a mic on it, and we'd be good. That you get from Target for $10
in my prerogative.
But that I started learning a lot in the process, you know, and I started becoming wiser in technology and how things work. And then I started seeing him, you know, preparation. Like, if you honestly, I know he doesn't like to hear this and praising us in front of him, but he does all the work.
You scholars get all the.
Anyways, he does all the editing. He does all the recording. Maheen gets all the guests. I just literally just show up, you know, and that's why I was like, man, you guys.
You're providing a content anchor.
I provide a yes and no. This is okay and that's not okay. I'm the mutawa, you know. I'm the halal haram police. That's it.
The commander of right, forbidder of wrong.
Are you beating them if they're not dressed right?
No, not at all. They beat me verbally, but so that being said, when we started sharing these podcasts, it started becoming kind of inspirational. Because you start listening to yourself, you start listening to content, and you want to be better and better and better at projecting your ideas at people. And then you start finding yourself catering to a certain type of people, and then you actually start thinking about the ummah more. That's one thing I liked about it. And me and Sim have this conversation all the time. It's like, I mean, you have to start thinking about the ummah more if you want to help them with issues, right? And that connection starts coming back. you know, and it's like a hobby for me. I tell them, dude, we don't really make money off of this, and this is like a hobby. I love having that therapeutic session of talking, and we're able to get our ideas out that we can't talk to everybody on a regular basis with. You know?
So how did you guys start making the content decision or the format decision to start bringing in guests regularly?
I think that was the beginning, but yeah, go ahead.
So my idea was, I'm like, well, right now, nobody knows us. There's not going to be much of a marketing platform for us. Dr. Shadi, whereas he already has his, large amount of followers on Facebook and things. So we're like, okay, well, what's the quickest way to let people know that we exist? Well, why don't we invite some people on who have large followings, and maybe we can talk about our own ideas and maybe shoot it back and forth with them. Now, that was okay for a little bit, but the problem is that majority of these people who already have a following, a large following, let's just think of Superstar X Scholar, right? I don't want to throw anyone's names out there, but a lot of their followers, they don't listen to podcasts. They're not. When you look at podcasting audiences, they're a very particular set of people who are relatively educated. They're not like meatheads who. There's always going to be a small group of meatheads who end up, commenting after an episode with silly comments. But majority of your listeners are going to be educated people, engaging with you, and the Superstar Scholars just don't necessarily have that kind of a following. They have people who are, they're looking for entertainment, like we were talking about earlier. Before this recording, there's a lot of consumers of what one of my friends calls Deen entertainment,
edutainment.
So they just they're not necessarily willing to sit down for an hour and a half to 2.5 hours listening to a podcast, and it was something new, and we didn't have any success with a lot of these Superstar Scholars. Even though we had them on, none of them cracked our top 10, and it's because we didn't really.
It was a learning process.
It wasn't just that, but when you have people that are well known, their message is very watered down. They're not going to say anything controversial. They're not going to, say anything that upsets people. So we found that once we had Dr. Shadi on, we're like, wait a second, this guy's. He hit number one. He's skyrocketed. His episode with perennialism skyrocketed to our most downloaded podcast ever, and he was up there for the longest time.
Here's just a quick interruption. This is a sign of how people try to make it big or try to get an audience by being non-controversial and by walking the middle line and by not making any commitments. It actually backfires on them. Yeah. It's like the sunnah of Allah in a lot of things, right? Yeah. Where you try to walk this, playing both sides of it, and you lose on all of them. Yeah,
you're trying to please someone besides. If you're trying to please someone besides Allah, you're not going to win.
I do it just for the sake of Allah.
Yeah,
I kid you not. I think a month and a half ago, I texted Dr. Shadi and Alex, and I think Saad too. I was like, I think we need to stop the podcast because we're getting too big. I was like, I don't want to get influenced by, outside opinion or anything like that. And I mean, I'm sure you guys can confirm it, right? I said, and Dr. Shadi was like, I think you're crazy, right?
If you have Dr. Shadi in your team, he ain't going to let that happen.
Well, for us, it's never been a numbers game, right? It's always been from the very beginning. I don't even know why people listen to us.
Let me tell you something. Right? Let me tell you something. It's many people make this mistake. They ask the question, how to succeed. Or how to get rich. This is the wrong question. The real question and the real challenge is how to be successful, or how to, if it's financial, how to be rich. How do you be successful in anything and remain attached to your core values and style as well? Because like you said, many people, as soon as they're surrounded with 5-6 advisors, these advisors castrate them, astaghfirullah, right? Or they declaw them. Or at the very least, okay, you're not offending people, but you're a bore.
No, it's not just that. They're marketing themselves, and they're the product. Okay? Yeah. So they have to be the advertiser who pulls out when something is controversial.
Yeah.
You know, so imagine being the product, the marketer, and everything rolled up in one.
Like
and then
politician.
you're literally policing every single word that's coming out of your mouth.
Well,
you know?
well, and that's why you have when you look at how to be, in that position, you have to always have a goal that's way greater than you, that you are not even close to cracking.
Yeah.
Right. And then you have to go at it. Right. You have to keep your eye on that instead of keeping your eye on what other people are telling you. Oh, or so and so said this about you, or so and so this about you, or you have this opportunity. Now you become the product, right? You become the goal. Maintaining that. Once you get into that, you really not only do you become ineffective, you become boring, right? No one's listening. But what people love is not necessarily someone who has the great way of speaking, or someone who has looks, or someone who has anything. What people love, and what's true, and what Allah loves.
Yeah.
Someone who has a goal, a mission, right? We need something to shoot for, something to climb at, something a wall to break down, right? And you got to keep yourself hungry for that reason. You have to. It's a mental game, and it's a really tough mental game, and you have to eliminate a lot of fake advisors and false advisors that are driven by their job as your admin, or their job as your marketer, or whatever, or whatever they're motivated by. And here's the thing: you don't have to be stupid or impolite, because in the matters of Deen, right? You have to be polite, and you can't be stupid, right? But you have to have a goal that you're shooting for that's bigger than yourself, and so that people don't think that we're saying, oh, in order to be true and sincere, you have to be just recklessly attacking, every politically correct subject. No, no one's saying that. But you have to have a vision that's greater than yourself. And one of the things that we've been talking about is the Muslim to have your common everyday Muslim that we share life with. We live together within America, or in Canada, or England, or Australia, right? Well, what is our focus here? What is our Deen? Why is it that way? Why do we believe in these things? That's one thing. And when we finish that, we haven't even started yet, because we have to change other ideas out there, like these ideas, even that are way bigger than us. That why do Muslims believe in these nations? Why do we believe? Why do we accept the Sykes-Picot? Now, you know how humongous that wall is? Well, but the right thing to do is to take a crack at it. That's the right thing to do, is to spread amongst people that we don't believe in these things. If there could ever be a time where you could tear down these borders, right, that would be the right thing to do. When EU's doing it, I'm not even saying flags and nations. Currencies. How about start with currencies?
Yeah.
I mean, that's a huge thing. But the idea is always to ask, well, what is Allah's watching you? What are you presenting? What are you giving? You got to give something. And that's where the curse of success is, that people just stiffen up, right? And they just don't want to lose the approval that they have. And I think that's it's got to be in your DNA to hate that.
So, Sheikh, just to that, in that direction, one of the things that shores that up in an individual is being part of a localized community or masjid, right? So if you three, Sim, Sheikh Hammer, and Dr. Shadi, if you could talk a little bit about the differences that, because you guys, when you were upstairs, Sheikh Hammer was telling us about how you guys were basically a community, like you had this bond because you knew each other from childhood, your families know each other.
Well, before even that takes place, I was someone when I was growing up, I was a brown kid in a school filled with white people, and
Chicago?
In outside suburbs of Chicago.
Lucky you, bro.
Very, very isolated. The Muslim community was very nascent in the western suburbs of Chicago at that point, and you're picked on and bullied, and you would often just not even end up going to the lunchroom because you were just so ostracized from the society, or from kids in general, and there's the social makeup of the school. So that kind of prepares you to be ideologically strong. I mean, when there's people who are, when the prevailing ideas of the culture are so much against you, you got to have a strong backbone.
Right.
You got to not give a bleep about anyone, what they think about you. You got to be honest to your creator at that point. And I think many of us went through that. I know I did. Sheikh Amr, I must have to some certain level, but I think that kind of prepares you, and you see that through the seerah when how the Prophet ﷺ was alone for most of his childhood, and then later on, you see that there is wisdom when Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala put you through that pain, and although you were miserable, it prepared you for people's backlash. And then yes, later on we kind of formulated our own little clique after college. During college, me and Sheikh Amir met up, and we were part of a whole lot of dawah that was happening in our college campuses. And then he went off and studied, and I went off doing my own thing. And after a while, I kind of got just sick of everything, and I just put everything off to the side. And
Did you become unmosqued?
No, I mean, I just got. It wasn't sick of that. It was like
giving up hope type thing.
You see, I learned through my own journey, of trying to find a group or a scholar who has all the things I agree with, or what I thought was the truth. And I couldn't find somebody who fit every category of the truth. I felt like everyone's letting me down in some way. Everyone's, changing their message as the world changes, as the social currents of society change. I felt like people are letting me down, so I just kind of gave up on everything. I'm like, you know what? I just need a break from all this, and
it's like Salman Farsi.
And I just kind of got away from everything. And then after a while, I just, I realized it. People may not necessarily have the entire truth. Maybe they have things that I can learn from them, and that's when that was like a big change that happened to me. Where, you know what? Stop hating on people, and just start seeing what you can learn, what fits, and it may not be that they are on the truth of 100%, but do your best to be intellectually honest and judge what they have to say against the Quran and Sunnah, and as how you understand it, and how the Sahaba and the scholars that you trust understand it. And from there, it kind of grew.
From my perspective, for me anyway, taslim to your sheikh, to a madhab, to whatever it is, right? Something larger than yourself, where you're not going to be like, well, let me just parse out and I'm not going to listen to this part of it. I'm not, like we were talking upstairs during lunch that there was a brother who he's a Salafi, but he wanted to learn Maliki fiqh, so he actually was asking a Maliki to teach him the Risala of Ibn Abi Zayd, but to skip the opening portions that talk about Aqidah, right? Like you just have to, if you're gonna just do it, right? So like if you follow a madhab, you take all the rulings, even if the ones that you maybe even intellectually disagree with or feel like don't fit, or you're like, I don't know if I accept. The better thing is to just let yourself go, and it gives you more. Believe it or not, that submission gives you more freedom, right? That's where you're trying, and it's the same thing with becoming a Muslim for me.
Keeps you
right?
punctual too.
Being able to just say, I became a Muslim. I hadn't finished the Quran, reading it. I hadn't, or the translation rather. I hadn't studied all these different things. I hadn't spent hours, grilling scholars. It seemed absolutely right to me from the amount that I did know, and I was like, I'm just going to jump in, and I'll learn once I'm in there, right? And that was much better than sometimes, people you hear that they're spending years thinking about their shahada. Just take it already.
I mean, that's just life in general, and the Deen as well, right? It's a path, right? It's not necessarily, get the destination, right? Allah is the destination. That the Deen helps you get there. And I think to second, Sim's point is that I think, similar to Sim, I think one thing I realized over time is that yes, I firmly believe that the truth does exist in a package, right, that's been handed down generation to generation, and we have access to that truth. Now, the embodiment of that truth within individuals, I think nobody is ma'soom, right, today, right? Nobody's, even besides the awliya and the anbiya, right? Sorry about that.
That's just proof that nobody is ma'soom.
Yeah, I mean, so besides the, and so you have to realize that even sheikhs, when you see them and you meet them, people who are teachers, we see them in a light that, they're infallible or they can't make mistakes. And this is not the case. So the idea of even finding someone who's going to be perfect, that's never going to happen. And I think, alhamdulillah, I've been blessed to, have close friendships with, a couple of shuyukh, right? So Dr. Shadi and Mufti Niyaz, both of my teachers, I've had the pleasure of having good relationships with both of them. And, one thing I've learned is like not only is it's being close to people like that, you realize that everybody's human, right? Everybody still makes slight mistakes, right? Obviously not large ones, right? But everybody still makes human blunders, and it's natural, it's normal. And then you kind of take the knowledge to be true. That doesn't change the knowledge, right? And at the end
did you feel any sense of obligation to your teachers or any scholars that are around you? To be a tool that they could use to further their message, to be someone who can be their aid?
Of course, to some degree you do, right? But, I mean, let's say, like, for example, your parents, right? I think all of us can agree that, within our parents, at least, everybody across the board, to some degree, has some issue with they find some issue, some human defect in their parents. Yeah. I'm sure my kids will find human defects within me as well, right? That doesn't mean that I don't respect my parents, I don't further what they're trying to teach me, that I don't take that across, right? But you have to realize it. It's still
no. I mean, specifically, like for me and Sheikh Ahmed would always be, hanging out after he came back from Egypt. It was this kind of his way of unwinding after years of Egypt and Mauritania and whatever.
I had to learn a lot back in the process. I was gone for. Sorry to cut you off.
Yeah.
There's some really important thing that actually occurs is that he's usually up to date with current affairs and everything that's happening. So with me, I was like this Bedouin that came back, and I need to be re-civilized. And I don't mean that. You know what I mean, right? Lightly. But what that means is that I need to know who and what I'm dealing with now, because I've been gone for a long time. Sheikh Amin from Dar al-Qasim, I remember when I first discussed with him when I wanted to leave and study Arabic. That was my original goal. I want to go to Mauritania and study Arabic, and then I want to get into fiqh. And he said, after you come back, if you're gone for 4 years, don't open your mouth no matter how much fiqh you studied for the first 6 months. If you're a genius, if you're really smart, just observe. Don't say anything. So why this was really important is how this alludes to the podcast is he would just be the person I'd constantly coming back to and was having discussions, teaching me culture. We joke about it, how little I know now and all that. It was fun. It was very fun. But now that started becoming something like he doesn't realize it, but it was a different type of tutelage I was with him and of teaching me what the reality of the world is. So sometimes I'd be talking about something and be very, from the books, from the Kutub al-Turath, from the classical books, but that mindset of the people, what is their mindset and how will they receive this? And I think that was a really important part of it, right?
Well, for me, it was like I was seeing him spending a lot of time with me, and I'm like, I'm not being there for him in terms of utilizing. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave me this person who has so much knowledge and I'm not being there as a vehicle to help him do dawah. And instead, we're goofing around. We have like great conversations as well. We're teaching each other stuff as well. But we're friends too, and we watch sports, and we'll hang out and we'll play video games or whatever, right? But then there's something that's gnawing at the back of my mind. I'm like, I'm not doing what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is going to ask me what I did with this guy when he was hanging out with me.
Absolutely. I mean, I feel that all the time with Mufti Niyaz, right? So Mufti Niyaz is one of my closest friends, and I mean, I only notice it when I'm with other people who don't know us, right? So or that don't know my friends or Mufti Niyaz, right? So I think one specific incident, I think we all went to Drexel together as a podcast group, and I remember I asked Mufti to grab me a coffee when he was coming back, and I remember Ilyas said to me, it's like, how are you going to ask? You should go get the coffee yourself. He's a teacher. And I was like, for me, it didn't even register. Like, he's like my boy. Like, I'm just asking him to get me a coffee. It's not that big of a deal.
I'm still standing on that. I've known Dr. Shadi longer than Wayne's been alive.
No.
I still would never ask him to give me a coffee.
I agree, right? No, I'm not saying you were wrong. You're right? But it's the idea that
it's like your own brother, right?
Yeah, and you sort of.
My older brothers would never call me Sheikh.
Oh man, no.
So
like ours.
And I don't want my friends.
It's like we have a brother.
The podcast once in a while we'll call you, but I cringe every time they call me Sheikh because we know each other so well. We're like buddies.
Yeah, like he'll massage me when I want, when
This
I'm
is-
like, hey,
let's-
man, I'm hurting. My neck is hurting.
This
He's
is
a
not
great
that kind of
masseuse.
podcast.
I have a question for you guys.
Massage therapist.
No, Sim, I have a question for you guys, and this is something I think you should consider.
Yeah.
I don't know the situation of the Masjid in Chicago.
Yeah.
This might be totally unnecessary, but have you guys ever thought of establishing
The Khilafah? I was thinking about that. I'm glad you brought that up.
have you ever thought of establishing a masjid / center that your kids could grow up in? Like you guys podcast, that's a little community for the guys, right?
Yeah.
But you need something that's going to touch more lives and, in a sense, in a deeper way. And I'm telling you, Allah Ta'ala, the Prophet ﷺ said, Allah loves the bilad that's has the most masajid. You know, أحب البلاد إلى الله مساجدها. The one with. So there's never too much.
Yeah.
And I'm telling you, one of the most blessed work to do involves masajid. Yeah. Any activity where you have to be at the front line of a masjid and praying, making salah, you realize Allah loves you. Allah is bringing you into His home. So, and I don't know about I don't think for the Ahnaf, but for the Malikis, we have a very looser definition, more basic definition of a masjid. Anything that's treated like a masjid, has an imam that leads it 5 times a day, is a masjid, whether it's rented, whether you draw a line in the sand, or whether you put some rocks, it's a masjid. So malaika are there, i'tikaf can be there, and you get the reward of walking and going and coming. Now the question is, like, imagine if you guys started that up. I mean, you get a holistic thing.
In Chicago, there's no shortage of masjids.
Yeah.
It's the people who are actually attending the masjid. This is where there's a shortage. Like when I bring my daughters over there, I'm like, sometimes it gets draining on them because they're like, there's nobody there our age, and it's only like a few people who come to the masjid, and you're thinking that you're trying to integrate us with the other Muslims, but
to me,
I'm telling you, like, this is them telling me, like, I'm telling you, Dad, like, no one our age is there, and even if when they are, they're only there during Sunday school or something like that.
To me, I've said this many times to people. If you're out there, start something up that would involve salah, and I would put it as there are 3 ingredients to this type of thing. The first one is the teacher. And that teacher should outline his minhaj. This is what the doctrine of this location is, so that we're all clear. Anyone could come, but this is what we teach, right? And they should have some evidence for that, right? And there might be evidence for other things, but this is what we teach. So the teacher should be there, and he should teach them systematically. Number 2, an activity center, like a gym or a kitchenette, right? Where random activities could take place. Right, that would bring people in. The third thing you need is the prayer space, because you could pray in the activity space. You can't have activities in the masjid space, right? Yeah. The third thing you need is the place for the salah, and people out there, they should do it, right? Okay. And you'll for a long time you'll struggle and have very, grimy realities in the beginning, but it grows, and the masjid. It teaches you a lot about yourself, teaches you a lot about the wiping away of sins that take place. And we see some of these reformers, and upstairs at lunch we were talking about some of these reformers and some of these people. And one of the things Mubin, in a conversation with him, he brought up is that when he meets some of these people, he realizes these people have very weak ibadah. And they're talking a lot about Islam, writing about Islam. Their ibadah is so weak. Yeah. It's like there's an incongruency here. Yeah. Why? Because the outlet of the messages are on the internet. Anyone could type an article or release a lecture on the internet. But if it's the masjid, well, you have to be upright in order to be respected in a mosque. The people who pray there regularly are not going to respect someone who never shows up, right, to the masjid to pray. So the best place to raise a family is the masjid. And it allows you, if the local mosque doesn't do what you yourself feel like is necessary, like has no activity element, has no element for girls, right? It allows you guys the ability to do that, right? So that your kids are raised in a space or in a place that, you have a say in,
By the way, so...
And your Patreon account could go support that. Yeah, which you don't have yet, but
So, Sheikh Ham, the two of the people from New Jersey that we talked about that you studied with in Cairo,
Yes.
the one thing that was that stood out about them and their immediate family when I used to live in the same city as them is that they were always in the masjid from little kids, right?
Yeah.
And you might, as little kids, there's little kids that are in the masjid. They run around, they play. Sometimes they get in trouble. Sometimes they're sitting in on the halakas. But you see them growing up in the masjid, and then it was them two and a couple of other kids who also turned out fantastic. They're the ones that go off and become something important, right?
Yeah.
And do something useful with their life.
Yeah.
When including the two that we talked about, they're people who could do anything.
Yeah.
Right? They have the intellectual capacity and they have the work ethic that they could become successful at anything.
Yeah.
And they choose to serve the Deen, right?
My philosophy
so this happens from just being in the masjid.
Yeah, my philosophy is you get if you have a masjid and you have 40 kids running around, one of them is going to choose to dedicate his life to the Deen.
Yeah.
It's just statistically speaking, that's how it's going to be. And when we talk about the Muslim community in any place, region or area, the way I look at it is you identify the masajid, then the leadership of those masajid and the followership or the attendees of those masajid, and then their relations to one another indicates the harmony or disharmony. But that's the beating heart of the community on the earth is the masjid, specifically the first row, specifically the 5 or 6 spots right behind the imam. That's where the soul of the community.
Yeah.
And that's if the people there are strong, the rest of the community will be strong. If the only people there are answering the call to Allah are the weak and the feeble, then they get the reward for it, and the ummah will remain to be weak and feeble.
And Shiham, we were talking earlier about there's a charitable foundation around here that does like food pantry and stuff. You guys met the owner of it. I don't want to just shout out names on the thing. Anyway, that's what they started as. They're just a community, and they don't feed just the Muslims. They feed everyone in the community. They specifically opened up in a part of the state, in a town, where there's a lot of poverty, and it's not Muslim. So they're helping out their local community, which is an obligation. It's dawah. It serves to put the name of the Muslims in a positive light. They're earning reward for that. And now, as they've grown, they've turned their space into a multi-use space, which includes having tarawih.
Yeah,
they have regular dhikr nights. They're doing mawlids. So you don't even have to start out as just a prayer space. You can start out as a place that does other things and draw people in. And by the way, there's a lot of young hufaz. They bring them in during Ramadan and give them a place to lead salah.
The difference between Islam in the 90s and Islam today is that if you wanted to have a voice and project your message to the Muslims, the location of it was in a mosque, right?
You're right.
If you're going to go walk into a masjid, you need some degree of respectability and piety to do that. Once the avenue shifted to the internet, now the door is open to anyone. Or academic conferences or classrooms, the door is open to anyone. And that's where you want to be able to raise a generation of people, of kids, where they would say, this guy, this first reference is the masjid, right? Someone's spewing some nonsense. The first reaction of a kid would be like, this would never fly in our masjid, right? This would never happen. And you yourself, if you walked into a masjid, no one would give you a mic because you have no sign of practice, right? So we want to create that reference point. And I think that the more centers like that you have, and it's not like you're competing against other masajid, but some masajid out there are just places of salah.
Yeah.
And we need community centers.
Yeah.
And community centers should not be civic centers where all we do is vote and talk about politics and social justice, right? It needs to be a place where the first thing that happens is aqidah and fiqh is taught.
Yeah.
Second thing that happens is socialization.
Yeah. And one other thing, man, that really is it doesn't even seem, it's sad that it seems to be a dream of mine, but because of we've all probably worked at masjids in some time or another. I've worked at a masjid before. One of the things that we see is the application of Rasulullah's masjid in Medina, of everything that the human beings did happen in the masjid.
Yeah.
There shouldn't have been any disconnect of people's social issues and their religious issues all in one. there has to be a model, and I was thinking about. I'm glad you brought this up. I was thinking about this for the past few years, but seriously, in the past few months, is that Rasulullah ﷺ used to conduct as a judge in the masjid and set the precedent for the Khulafa Rashidun of that, right? And I think that when we start appointing individuals as a masjid judge type thing, not that he's going to start off as somebody who's just going to be like, hey, you guys have a divorce case, come and talk to me in front of everybody. It's not going to be like that. But once you make people realize that much more has to start happening in the masjid.
Like an arbitrator. Almost.
Yes. Yeah. Because culturally, unfortunately, kids are not allowed to talk in the masjid, right? And one thing I say to people, I don't know what your guys' opinion on this, but I kind of hold this dearly. One of the main benefits of the masjid that I used to work at was that it was a small place, and the kids can make as much noise as they want, because the goal was to bring attachment of them to the masjid. But culturally, if you come from India and Pakistan, I don't know about other cultures, you're not allowed to talk in the masjid, and sometimes you prefer kids not to come to the masjid, right? But kids are crying. What happens? If somebody turns around, a few people turn around and start yelling at the father, why did you bring this kid? That's what's supposed to happen in the masjid. We're supposed to be able to concentrate and have khushu' in our salah with all the social atmosphere that occurs, of a natural phenomenon with children, right? We all say this.
That's why you have to have that second room, whether it's a gym,
exactly.
Something. Yeah.
You have to have that outlet for them, of course. But even in the masjid, everything should be happening in the masjid. So we need to start talking in the masjid, whether it's in our khutbahs or in our durus, that this masjid, we have to have, everything should be settled in this masjid. If we have a dispute, we should, you have a group versus another group, for instance, it has to be settled inside of the masjid, but in a nice professional manner, right? So I believe in a community center, but I believe that the mindset of the Muslims should be that the masjid itself is a community center, but we're going to have recreational stuff added to it for the children, outlet, all the things that you mentioned. Because the masjid now is seen as something as like a seclusion. It's not seen as something that is supposed to help me in my life. Yeah. It's seen as something where we're going to go away, do something ritualistic, and get back into civilization. We compartmentalize the masjid, I think, mentally. And I think that once we include that in the civilization, yet it's supposed to be the heart of the civilization that you said, that's where I think the masjid is going to be seen differently. The paradigm of masjid is going to change,
I'm going to counter this because it's not that I disagree with the point, but there's an aspect of this that I disagree with, because I think that a lot of people also get into this mindset that adding a gym into the masjid is going to solve the problem of the masjid, or adding this auditorium is and like holding stuff there is going to bring more youth in, right? The youth are going to come to the masjid now.
Our kids,
whatever. That this is going to solve all the problem. And I think it was last year I got to sit in on a I won't say which masjid it was, but I got to sit in on a fundraising dinner, and they it wasn't a fundraising. It was like the open forum discussion where people in the community could ask questions, and there was a presentation. So the president of the masjid went through an entire presentation about what the masjid is about, right? And so it went through a whole list that the masjid is about recreation and bringing the community together, and it was about interfaith, and it was about feeding the poor, and he went through the whole presentation. Everybody was like, alhamdulillah, this and that, and the whole time I'm just sitting there thinking, hold on, the masjid is about Allah and His Rasul, right? That's first and foremost.
Many people are making a civic center.
So I think you have to be careful when you say it's like, okay, we want the masjid to be a community center. Yeah, I 100% agree that the masjid of Medina of the Prophet ﷺ was this civic community. Was this community center that brought people together, and then all things in all
started from there.
Started from there. I'm totally on board with that. But there, at that time, people also had this paradigm, as I mentioned in the past, of Allah and His Rasul. That's the most important thing.
But to be fair to the time, I'm sorry, continue.
Yeah. So that's all I was saying. I mean, I don't want to say that I disagree with you, but we just have to be. I just want to be careful about this.
We're sharing ideas, but one thing I want to say is that alhamdulillah, if somebody feels that having a rec center in the masjid is going to solve the problems, don't take apart that initiative. It's not going to solve. Maybe it won't solve any problems. Let me start with a different type of scenario. Now, just think to yourself for a second. What would happen if a masjid had a swimming pool? Just think about it. Would that bring more benefit to the ibadah of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, or would it not?
It would. Not
as far as numbers. I'm talking about the mindset.
It absolutely would.
I think it's mutually exclusive.
No. So check this out.
It's a sunnah.
No, this is what I'm saying. This is what I'm saying, right? One of the things that we're supposed to be taught is swimming. But what is the biggest dilemma that sometimes religious people have and women have? They can't go swimming anywhere.
Right.
Even though they want to. They can't learn and all that. So the thing that's missing, and I'm not saying that this is going to solve all problems. What I'm saying is the people that are already there, it gives them an entity to be very, very proud of, and that's attachment to Allah. The second thing is that when people, to be fair, when they're saying the masjid is this and it should be that, I think that everyone already knows that it's for the sake of Allah. They just didn't verbally say it, right? Everybody knows that the masjid is for Allah. And I think the reason why a majority of people, when they market it that way, they know that the masjid is for Allah, but they're so hungry to sometimes to bring people into the masjid, they kind of need to lure them in. I don't agree with that either. Yeah. I'm not saying this is a luring in tactic. I'm saying the paradigm of the masjid has to change, meaning that this is our heart, this is our soul. Everything has, but if somebody is saying that, hey, it's going to bring more youth in, no, if that's the mindset, the youth are only going to be there the nights where the gym is open, and they're going to miss us a lot in the masjid.
Teaching and ta'aleem has to be the crown jewel.
Yeah.
And that's
but they need an outlet too. Sisters, like imagine how awesome the community would be if the masjid had a swimming pool, right? A pool for the gentlemen, a pool for the women.
By the way,
and that would be such an amazing attachment.
Having well-run,
organized
classes
with lifeguards, hopefully.
That for the pool, but also when it comes to ta'aleem, right? So, if you have a well-organized program, like an actual program, not we're going to teach Arabic starting at all the different levels. It's all Tuesdays, except for when the teacher doesn't show up, and then sometimes we won't do it for 2 weeks in a row. But to have like an actual organized, there's a schedule, there's an exam, there's review, there's actual books that everybody's using the same text, and it always starts at the same time and it ends at the same time. And we begin in September and we end in December, and then we start again in January and we end in May. This kind of like well-organized stuff actually brings people in.
What's really
you're right. Actually, you're right. It's organizational stuff.
Those are the
because just offering classes willy-nilly that don't follow up and then they never finish the book, and that's nonsense. But when you have an actual program, people will come to that.
What's really interesting though, right? And this is really just this idea is only the sort of relevant to America and the American Muslim population, because one thing I always found interesting is in classical Muslim societies, even to this day existing, right? So I come from a village in India, a Muslim village. There is no community center at the masjid because the community is the community center, right? Women don't need to go to the masjid because they get their community outside in the village itself, right? Everybody's like when it's Mawlid, the streets light up and people share food. When it's Eid, it's alive. They have community things going on. So the masjid is sort of just there, and people flow in and out. And when there's like a big problem, the masjid is kind of involved, but it's not. The focus isn't necessarily the masjid. The focus is the community. And I don't know how to reconcile that, because like let's say you go to like Yemen right now, right? And so you go to Tarim, right? The masjid isn't like the focal point of where like community happens.
But that's all Muslim country, right?
Yeah. So this is where it's
completely different.
Yeah, so I don't know how to reconcile that, because it's like
I see what you're talking about now. I see what you're talking about now, yeah.
No, but I'll tell you one of the differences though. If there's a state masjid, that's one of those big, the types of historic building, right?
Yep.
They want to make sure nothing happens there, right? But when you have a masjid that...
Wait, I didn't get the whole historic. What do you mean the whole...
like the
state-run historic.
Like, for example, Masjid al-Hussein or the Masjid al-Hakim bi-Amrillah in Cairo.
Oh, okay. I thought you were talking about here. I'm sorry.
No, yeah.
Okay, I was like, where are the state-run masjids here?
Those masajid that are preserved by the state, it's just like a local... But when you have the masjid established by the sheikh, right, him and his students and his followers, the hub is there. Like, for example, in Dar al-Mustafa, What is Tareem without Dar Mustafa right now? Of course, it has its history, of course, right? But when you go, where's the headquarters? Where's all the action? Why? Because people love the sheikh and his students and who they teach and their teaching, etc. Right? So people go for that. Likewise, in Egypt, there was Sheikh Saleh al-Jafari. He passed away in the 80s, 60s maybe, and I think now his grandson runs it, and they have their teaching and the families that sort of follow that sheikh and love that sheikh, and now all the people need something to do, so they started up a little hospital, right? A little charity thing. They have a big dinner every Thursday night. They all are upon the same heart. They're on the same belief. It's because the sheikh started that masjid. It's a private mosque.
I see what you're saying.
If you go to these, like for example, the private Salafi mosques in Egypt, they're all privately run. They're packed. Right, so you have to look at the two different masajid where it's started by a sheikh, and then the students and their family and the supporters fill it with activity. They actually become community centers, as opposed to the type of masjid you see on the postcard or on the calendar. That's just the one that the state has taken over its maintenance, and the tourists go there, right? Yeah. And it's just like salah and go home, and the imam, can't really talk, can't do anything, and there's intentionally nothing going on there. So that's the division.
I see what you're saying. Yeah.
And to
I'm glad we had this discussion. I didn't know we were going to go into this length, but I'm glad we're having this. And I'll tell you why. Please continue after this, because this is something really important. One of the main benefits of this podcast that we've had right now, and I'm not sugarcoating, I'm being totally real here. Can you believe that I never thought of opening a masjid? It never even crossed my mind. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala brought me to New Jersey. Someone could knock some sense into me. But I never thought about that, because when you linked it to kids, that's our priority. We love our kids more than ourselves. I just thought about that. What masjid are my kids going to grow up in?
Dude, that keeps you motivated.
Dude, I'm having the hair on my neck is standing up because you start tackling issues from all around about your kids and their iman and what's their future going to be like, and it's just so simple. Where are my kids going to go to the masjid? Why wouldn't I want to be somebody who establishes, even if it's small? Who cares if it's the size of this room? Yeah, right. But why wouldn't I want to do something? I'm telling you, it'll grow. And you gave us the elements too. You said teaching. Yeah, it needs a teaching.
The first thing is a teacher.
Yeah. And the second thing you said was
the recreation center,
the recreation or an outlet area, right, for activities. Mm-hmm. And the third thing you said is the actual prayer space. Yeah. Subhanallah. So simple. 1, 2, 3.
So simple. And I'm telling you, for example,
honestly, I never thought of that. I was going to put my kids in Islamic schools, do this, teach them Arabic. I never thought.
When I was young, if my dad had a conversation with a friend outside or in the masjid, and where you need to leave, it was the most frustrating thing in the world. I sit there, go check, sit in the car a little bit, go back. Really frustrating. But now, for example, if I am delayed in the masjid, they want me to be delayed. Why? They go shoot some baskets, right? In the room, in the gym behind the masjid. They actually want you to be delayed so that after the program, they could shoot baskets, right? They should shoot, and there's some closet full of toys, right? And do that. There's a kitchen, their food area. Sometimes they sneak in, right, and take like a bag of Doritos, which they're not allowed to do. This is sadaqah money, right? Put it back. So, but that concept that they want to be in the building for that reason. But I always make sure, I always felt that if the teaching wasn't established for a good year or two first, right, then you would have position manned by ignorant people, and you don't want that. Yeah. You want the positions manned by those, right, personnel that honors and respects Deen and Ta'aleem.
Yeah, then you could hard trust to find, unfortunately. At
least that's why you got to teach first.
Yeah, at least in the Midwest. But sorry, Brother Ilyas, I cut you off, man. Please go ahead, man.
So I'll just add a couple of quick things. Number one, Dr. Shadi won't tell you, but the same example that I gave you about the two shuyukh that you studied with in Cairo, Dr. Shadi, as a kid, and he alluded to it slightly here, his father was the guy that had the key that went and opened the masjid for Fajr, and for a long time, that was like the center of his dad's life, and the kids are coming along, and so you grow up in the masjid, and it has long-term effects. Even if you're the kid that's like, come on, I want to leave already, right? I want to go play basketball or something.
I'm just thinking how fun that would be for my children. Like, we're going to our masjid. Yeah. How awesome would that be, right? You know how kids are, especially at this age. My oldest daughter is 9, my son is 5, my youngest one is 15 months. But they love doing things together with us as a family, even going to the park. Imagine how fun it would be to just go to the masjid. Is something that your family established.
I think Moeen's going to add something, but then I'll finish up.
No, go ahead.
No, please.
Yes, I mean one thing I was going to say, and I think I never realized this until I met Dr. Shadi. One thing that he taught us is this idea that going to the masjid itself, right, is almost a type of tasawwuf, right? Because it requires some work to go to the masjid, right? Let's say waking up for Fajr,
I agree
right?
with you 100%.
Waking up for Fajr, even being involved in the masjid, dealing with masjid politics and masjid uncles and the problems of the masjid, all these things, I actually think over time it builds a lot of character, right? Being around different types of individuals. And so, like, maybe this is just like the cynical part of me, like thinking this thing, but I don't know if the fault is in the masjids or it's in the population. I mean, I don't know.
You mean like the building versus the humans?
No. I mean, like, is it like, a lot of people say it's like, oh, our masjids need to change. We need to add all these things. We need to do all this stuff.
I get it.
And the way I think about it, and maybe it's just me being cynical,
just
right?
need better people.
Is it the people that have changed, or is it that the masjid needs changing, right? So sometimes that always bothers me, right? It says
it's pretty deep.
I turned out fine in the masjid, and sometimes I think like it's because of the stuff that I learned in the masjid, the character and dealing with people and dealing with that like really stubborn uncle or that random like guy who like talks to you that like about like some obscure topic and you have to learn, and these like things build character. When you meet that uncle who yells at you that you need to pick up the trash, right?
You're right.
So these little things, right? I think are part and parcel of what makes a masjid. So I mean, is it the masjids that need changing, or is it people that need changing?
Here's a thought. I've thought about this for a while. We don't know what the future holds, and whatever is unpredictable and you cannot imagine is probably more likely than what you can imagine. I have thought about what happens if there's a period of time that the country descends into, or the world descends into, where there's no longer safety, basically basic civil safety. The police have lost order. Could there ever be a time when the local police have lost order for some reason? You never know. Like,
yeah, of course.
You never know what's going to happen, right? And then what would we be saying? We'd be saying, the next generation would be coming and saying, our parents never taught us martial arts. Our parents never taught us to use weapons. Our parents never secured the mosque. We would naturally say, we didn't have to, right? That's our natural thing. They would come up and establish masajid that were literally safe, because you had armed people at it at all times to avoid these roving gangs, right? Just imagine this hypothetical. Well, here's the other the problem that we've had. The problem is now different. The current problem is now different. Number one, the average person in the 70s and 80s had common decency and knew the fundamentals of Islam, and there was no threat to the basics of daruri knowledge. Right? Therefore, they didn't need to establish it. Right? The craving need, or this dire need for a teacher of Aqidah was basically maybe not as important as it is today. Secondly, right, you were Muslim. Your family's Muslim. You're going to be Muslim. There was very little competition for your attention. So you didn't need to make the masjid a place of excitement, right? Maybe it wasn't a need. You just needed a place to pray Jummah.
Yeah, you were competing with 3 TV channels, one of which came in fuzzy.
Exactly. The competition. So that's why the mentality of they said, okay, let's take 4 walls and that's a mosque. Bang. It's over.
Yeah.
So just imagine us, the world changing on us, which it will change on us, right? And the same way that the world changed on the previous generation of masjid, people who established masajid. So I think that it's a combination that the people have changed, right? The people have changed to the negative, that there are more threats against them. The society has changed and the people have changed. There are more threats against them, and we as human beings, unfortunately, have required, because we're creatures of this world, higher dosages of being pleasured and entertained. The idea of taking a kid and putting him and having no fun all day could have passed in our time. How many days in the 80s that you grew up that you did not have fun on a Saturday at all? Like you went with your mom to errands, right? Then your then your sister needed to go shoe shopping, but someone needed to. Your dad wasn't there to take care of you, so you had to go with your sister's shoe shopping.
It was better being a dad back then. Too. You didn't have to take the kids.
So you had to go shoe shopping with your mom and sister. Hypothetical. And then got late. All right, no food. We got to go to the supermarket. By the time you get home at 6:00, you have to have dinner. There's no such thing as let's have dinner after the game. There's no such thing, right? You're having dinner. You missed the game that's on TV. The one thing that you looked forward to the whole time from 6:30 to 9:30 p.m. was, let's say, an NBA playoff game, and you missed it. The only thing that could make you happy that day is to wait for the rerun on the 11 o'clock news, right? And that was it. So that happened. If that happens today to a kid...
He'll file a complaint with the UN.
It's
Human Rights Commission.
Right? So the negative on us is that the desire and need to be pleased and pleasured and entertained is so much greater.
Yeah.
Right? So that's why,
Yeah, so I'm just gonna just to wrap up the point I was gonna make before is, and for anybody that's thinking about doing any kind of Muslim organization, there's just one recommendation that I have it's not a recommendation. Wallahi, if you listen to nothing else that I ever say, do this. And that is, don't have board elections and elected boards for anything, especially masjids. Yeah. It's nonsense. There's no precedent for it. No other nonprofit runs that way. You can't have a vision and you can't enact that vision when your board is constantly changing, and it's constantly changing based on popularity or who has the most friends or who can rustle up the most votes. It's garbage. Before you start the organization, set up a vision, select people for the board who fulfill that vision, and as they need to leave if they have to or they die, have the board appoint somebody else that has the same vision.
Real quick, if MSA had to do it over, it would be SSA. Sunni Student Association, right? Because it's too broad. What is a Muslim? Okay, Qadiani's claim to be Muslim, right? So in these vision statements that people have, the idea of putting down where our aqeedah comes from and where our fiqh, why is it that Salafi masjids were more crisp than your average local mosque? Like, you know what you're going to get. You never have a restaurant except that it tells you we're a seafood restaurant, we're a burger joint, we are this or that.
Yeah, you can't let your customers. Well, you come here a lot, so we're gonna elect you, and you get to pick stuff for the menu. Even if so, now we have to add turkey sandwiches to our sushi restaurant.
Exactly. Yeah.
No,
because
it's not gonna happen.
One guy once. We had a guy from. At some point, someone said, There's a guy from one of these umbrella organizations, I'm not going to say which it is, you can probably figure it out when I'm about to say it, and to come and advise us on governance, right? So he gave an example, and he said, there was such a program for the birth of the Prophet, Mawlid, right? And they said, should we do it or not? Right? And he said, his response was, he said, I taught this masjid, and my advice to them was, for anything, the first thing that you ask is, will the community accept this? Is it inclusive or not? I said, no, this is way off. Do or do not based on a thought-out principle, right? And a minhaj. And educate your people. This mosque operates on XYZ minhaj.
You can go to other ones.
You could come for any event you want, and you could not come. But so you know, this is a seafood restaurant, right? This is a steakhouse.
Right.
Don't come and ask me why there's no fish and now marching outside. There's no fish outside the steakhouse. Why? And write a bad review.
Crybabies, man. That's how we become.
I'm telling you.
But I don't want to drive to the next restaurant. I want you to serve me what I want because you're closer to my house.
The only people who can't do that, the only people who cannot do this, right? Maybe they cannot do this are...
Even Burger King doesn't let you have it your way.
Yeah. So you may upset a couple people now, but you've immediately limited and contained the people you will upset, and now you can grow. Now you as a sheikh can actually teach, right? I once went to the MSA and it was developing. This was way back, and they said, okay, and then I discovered, well, there are now Shia there. Okay, so what do you want me to do? I'm teaching Sahih Muslim. Should I remove the hadith of Aisha? Like, what is this? Do you think things through or not? Right? This is a theological operation here, so you gotta tell us what we're doing.
You could do like NYU does, where they have Khalid Latif, and they also have some Shia guy.
They have him officially?
Yeah.
Yeah, see, this.
I've seen the videos.
I can't stomach.
I've
this.
seen the videos.
Yeah,
It makes me want to put somebody.
We actually were there yesterday when he was given a dars.
Yeah,
we were actually praying Dhuhr and Asr, right? So we got there like we missed.
Bro,
Jumu'ah.
I've seen some of his durus like online.
Yeah.
I wanna put that dude in like a rear naked choke or something. I can't do it.
Yeah.
It's
Don't put that
scum.
on the podcast.
Oh my god.
I'm telling you, this stuff is. Just why don't you put peanut
This is
butter?
horrible. It's like horrible things about like Khalid bin Walid radiallahu anhu. Like what is he doing? I would hit him in real life. I would hit him. I wouldn't let him talk like that. I don't care if I get arrested.
See, you can get away with that. You're an attorney, bro. We can't.
No, I wouldn't care. I'd get arrested and I'd lose my job, but it doesn't matter because
I know what you mean.
You're not going to insult the Sahaba in front of me. Scum. I can't do it.
You for your passion for the Sahaba.
No, it's unaccepted, and that's where we've gotten for not putting Aqidah first.
Remember those Shia guys that just invited people
themselves?
They just invited, say, oh, there's a Hussein we're doing a Hussein program this year or whatever it was, right? Ashura program. Just from saying that, I was like fired up. People were like, calm down, stop. Yeah. And they didn't even say anything crazy, but I know what they do. So
of course, yeah. No,
not that, and it's not. This is not about. By the way, this is not against regular rank and file everyday share. But people who consider themselves ulama should know better. Mm-hmm. They've studied. They know more Arabic than I do. They've read more books than I do. They have access to all this information, and they're just either insincere or stupid. Yeah. And either way, they're not acceptable. And once they start insulting Sahaba, it's not accepted. I'm sorry. Yeah, if you go around and you're a Shia because you grew up in an Iranian family and that's just who you are, alhamdulillah, that's your business. You do what you do and you don't know much and you're jahil, that's fine. Yeah. Right? Like I am.
I feel like I'm back in the 90s.
Like just regular, by the way, I like a regular person like me, right? Everyday rank and file Muslim. You just know what you know about your perspective and you don't know the other one, alhamdulillah. But if you're like a scholar and you're wearing a big black turban and you're trying to tell people what happened historically with people that are, greater than your mother and your father, then you have no excuse, and I'm not going to accept it from you. I just want to go back to what you asked before about serving. Yeah, that's that whole thing about taslim to the sheikh. This is the question you asked before you went upstairs and came back and went upstairs and came back a second time. That's the only reason I do any of this stuff is because Dr. Shadi asked me to. Otherwise, you wouldn't even know who I am, and I'd be just sitting around.
You guys are an awesome team. So honestly, I know you guys don't want to hear praise in front of your face. No one asked me to say this. Honestly, you guys are an awesome team, dude. Honestly, I feel like we should do. I don't want the podcast to end right now. That's why I keep talking with you guys, man. You guys are true gentlemen, honestly, man.
No, sorry for all the rant, but
it's some stuff it was a breath of fresh air, dude. I haven't heard that talk since the
90s. the number of ayats about the Sahaba are too much to enumerate and too clear to enumerate.
Radiallahu anhum wa radu an.
How about shuhada ala nas? And you're not going to accept their hadith? Allah said they're witnesses to the people on what the Prophet ﷺ said, and you're not going to accept their hadith. So this ayah is, upon this ayah, Imam Malik said we treated them as fasik, right? Or as mushrik. I mean, no marrying from them and whatnot. And every once in a while, you need to draw that line in the sand. So you don't have confusion. Your kids could grow up with stability, right?
Oh, but you're causing sectarian conflict.
We're not causing it. The heretics, by being heretics, are causing it. Right?
Bro, it's not like I'm walking around naming my kids Muawiyah like I would want to.
Sheikh Amr did.
My son's name is Muawiyah.
MashaAllah. MashaAllah.
So you put a line in the sand.
By the way, I wasn't kidding. I literally would love to name my son Muawiyah.
Inshallah. May Allah give you children and one of them Muawiyah.
I mean.
So I want to get back actually slightly, just like 10 minutes prior to the Shia discussion.
We weren't talking about them, were we? We were just talking about content.
So I think
sorry guys.
In addition to the basically what I was going to say is, from the 90s to today, I think masjids have changed, but also the environment that we live in has changed. As Dr. Shadi said, right, there was only one thing to do in 1995, right? There wasn't, at the end of the day, there was one thing to look forward to. I mean, with the internet and the boom of the internet, and this was initially going to be our middle topic, is that the way Muslims consume information and understand information, there's so much distraction, right? An insane amount of distraction that the masjid itself now has to accommodate for that distraction, right? In order to just get you into the masjid, now we have to buy a pool table before you just came for the sake of Allah, right? Now it's like, the intention might be for coming to Allah, but that incentive for the pool table is kind of nice, right?
People treat the masjid now like kids treat like their toys. They're like, how come it doesn't light up and it doesn't it doesn't make sounds and it doesn't
pound it up, brother.
I think when you promote this,
it doesn't have a touch screen.
Yeah. When you promote this stuff, part of education is to lay down what something is, and if you ever go out in anything to take a consumer approach and give people a consumer approach, you're in trouble. Right, you're in big trouble, right? And a lot of times, you know what people ask me? People say, if we do this course, what do we get? Right? My answer is, you took the course. You learned something. That's what you get. But I tell them, do you want me to go to Staples and print out a nice glossy piece of paper? I could do that for you if you want, right? It means nothing. Why am I taking this? What do I get at the end of this course? You get the fact that you learned, that you took the course. Right? And that type of boredom is something that the model minorities in their world, like, you heard this phrase, like model minorities, right? Like Pakistanis, Chinese, Indians, Coptic Egyptians, right? These model... Did we talk about this already?
Just keep going, brother. Keep going. It don't matter.
Because these people... These people, their parents came from a world that was very simple.
Yeah.
Right? There's nothing to do. So they teach their kids that there's nothing to do except study. Okay? So they've educated their children and habituated them to simplicity. Like a simple day. A day in which I studied math for 3 hours, right? Maybe had fun for 1 hour, right? They've habituated their kids. And fun means we played dodgeball, right? With my brother and sister. We played dodgeball. Or we kicked the ball in the backyard. Like one tool, the ball, right? One prop, one toy. Very simple. So to habituate people, and that's part of the education, I feel, I would put it closer to tasawwuf or psychology. You have to change the psychology, right? Don't expect to be entertained. I'm not, a clown to come and entertain you. You need to control your brain, right? And make yourself realize that the value is the ta'lim, right? That's it. We have one textbook. You take the lecture. You ask questions. You learn. You practice it. No, there's no slides. Yeah. There's no video element. There's no AV element.
It's very human. Sadr on sadr.
Yeah. Anytime that you act as a type of, I don't know what to do, what do you want to do, I always immediately shut that company off. Like if a company says, it sends a survey, tell us what you want. To me, you know what that says? You don't know what you're talking about, right? Because I'm only going to tell you something that I already know. I need a company that's going to give me something I don't know, right? And that's one of the things I loved about Apple, right? And Steve Jobs' approach was awesome. He said, I'm not going to do a survey because they're going to only tell us something they know exists. I need to bring them something they don't know exists, something they need that they don't know that they need, right? So if a group doesn't have that, or a company or masjid, whatever, doesn't have that attitude where we actually can provide you with something you might not know that you need it. You need it. I'm telling you, you need it.
That's the most successful business.
That's the most successful thing in the world. And Dhikr night is something that we did. Right? Asim started off. He had the idea, and many people were like, "Well, what are we supposed to do with this? What's the big deal?" Right? And I actually firmly believed you need it. Right? And it stuck.
Can you explain?
Dhikr night is very simply that we know that people do not do dhikr. Right? Very rarely people do dhikr.
Only Salafis don't do dhikr.
Huh?
Only Salafis don't do dhikr.
No, but the common...
Salafis do group dhikr every year on Eid.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
In the masjid.
No, your common guy, how many times is he reading Surah Al-Mulk at night? Right? Very rarely. How many times is Adhkar of the evening at night? Very rarely. Right? So our job is to get him habituated to that. Well, how are you going to get him habituated to that? So you're going to come in and you get the book and we recite it together. You get habituated to it. Maybe in 3 or 4 years, one day you'll say it alone in your room. So you accomplish something that wasn't there before. Right? So...
Not one day. My wife does Rawatib every day now.
Allahu Akbar. Critical. Critical.
I can comment on this with personal experience, right? I mean, after going to the Dhikr nights, eventually you're just like, hey, maybe I should do the wird by myself, right? Instead of just going to the Dhikr every time. Because I remember one day I was sitting there, I was like, I need to go to the Dhikr, I need to do my Dhikr. I was like, wait a minute, I could just do my Dhikr. No, but it's true, right? The purpose behind it is to sort of bring people together, to educate people how to make dhikr. You'd be surprised how many people actually don't know how to make dhikr, right? It's like, if you meet like a just like recently converted person, like I know one of my friends, he recently converted, and like you explain the concept of dhikr, and he's like, what do you mean? Like, what am I just supposed to repeat it? Like, what am I supposed to? And he was like, can you show me? Like, what am I supposed to do? Exactly. It's a foreign concept for a lot of people, and I don't think it's just like, like converts that have that problem. I would argue even Muslims don't know how to do dhikr, right? If they've never been taught, then you're not going to know.
Not for Catholics, man. Catholics.
Oh,
yeah. That's their punishment for doing.
I recently
their punishment for doing a sin, and then they confess is go do dhikr.
Do just like go 25 Hail Marys.
Well, like Bart Simpson writing the sentences over
like
and over on the chalkboard.
Certain formulations, certain dua and stuff a certain number of times.
See, when we were young, we were given big jars of kidney beans, and this is one of the things that made me turn away from Sufism when I was young. Was that it seemed like our parents would be invited to a party. Everyone, yeah. But I'm telling you, it's like these big jars of beans, and you're counting. You're saying something. You have no idea what you're saying.
But you have to complete. Everyone has to complete the million that's there or something.
Yeah, it's like
a bunch of people there throw in the middle, and once you complete it, then the person is forgiven, inshallah, or something like that.
Yeah, and it just seemed like an exercise in futility because you're like, what is this doing? I'm not experiencing anything. It's supposed to be some kind of religious practice, but it just seems very odd. Why is it kidney beans? Why aren't we picking pennies or some jelly beans or some other kind of item?
I have an answer for that.
Yeah.
All the other items that you named, there's things that people would pocket. Who's going to steal a kidney bean?
No one, right? Yeah. But it was just it was just odd because
that's the result of when something is inherited.
Yeah.
And the reason behind the core reason is not inherited, and so they're unable to pass on the core purpose or reason.
Yeah. And it's also been changed.
And it's been changed and altered, and
meaning is I think in that in the example that Sim provided, like meaning is what's missing.
Yeah.
Right. It's I don't know why I'm doing this. That's the part of it that's missing. And a lot of times you see that with a lot of people's practice, not just dhikr, is that it becomes an Islam of purely ritualistic practices.
Yeah,
I just do these things and that's what I have to do. They don't know why I'm doing them or what the significance is behind why I need to do this. But I've just been told to do this, and so I'm doing this. Now I'm throwing some kidney beans into the center of the room.
Yeah, in a recent thing between what people like, right, what the public or Muslim public likes and versus need, is I recently realized that a lot of our intellectuals, a lot of our commentators, good commentating, good activity, but I think the basics need some shoring up. Right, and many people, it's purely intellectual, right? So I thought the best way to do this is to learn how to read Quran, right? So when I put the Tajweed series up, I got some comments like, no one's really going to watch this. It's not exciting. It's not interesting. I'm like,
it's not exciting.
Yeah, I was like, this is not about that. It's about what you need, right? And even if it's not even true, and even if the medium, Facebook people go to comment and have fun, right? But at least it got on your radar that you need Tajweed. It got on your radar. Even if you didn't watch the videos on that, but it got on your radar that there's something called Tajweed. I actually need to pronounce the letters right. And I need to do that. I need to actually learn this. And if it gets on someone's radar like that, then the goal has been achieved. Yeah. But it's all about, like you studied, right? You know the blueprint of Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah, number one, and you know the blueprint of an upright Muslim. You know the blueprint. You know the terrain, America. In your sense, Chicago, right? Now, the community needs someone to tell them what to do. Lay this brick here. Wait on this brick. Don't put this brick yet. Put the piping in. Lay this foundation. That's what you studied for, right? Now, for someone that I've seen and you've seen, people have studied, they came back the exact opposite. Like, where are you all at? And he's bending and torturing the text and the tradition, right, to fit where people are at. Yeah. It's like, what is your point?
Interrogation of the text.
Exactly. Why? So that the people could like it. When people say to me, I'm not feeling a lot of khushu' on my salah, what should I do? I said, the first thing is stop worrying about how you feel. That's the first thing.
That's pretty profound. Wait, what do you mean by that?
A brother came and said, I've been going to the masjid, and I committed I'm going to go to the masjid in the summer every day for salah for 5 times a day. But after a while now, right, the feeling is not there. I said, you're worshipping Allah. Stop worrying about your feelings.
Subhanallah.
Right? Worship Allah for Allah. Allah knows this is good. Okay, so the Mujahid out there in the Mamluk times, in the Abbasid times, the Seljuk Mujahid is fighting the Christians and the Crusaders. He's enjoying himself. Right?
Right? No, and I'll tell you why that's so profound.
I didn't have a spiritual experience. I didn't see Jibreel with a yellow turban.
SubhanAllah. No, I'll tell you why that's very profound. I met a brother in Egypt, and he trekked all the way to Egypt to meet some of the big Sufi scholars there. Yeah. And he was living with me for 2 weeks, right? His exact words, he had a book. I don't even know who the author was. And the person was quoting Imam al-Ghazali. And he still said to me, he's like, look, this is why I'm here. He was on a mission, like. And he's like, when Fatima radiallahu anha, when she used to pray, there used to be a light that used to emanate from her room. I was like, subhanallah, that's awesome. And he's like, that's why I'm here. I was like, what do you mean? He's like, once I see that light, I know I'm on the truth.
Wow.
Look at that delusion. No, but look at that delusion.
He's roadie for goofism.
If you feel that you're not going to get any feeling, this is the main thing, dude. Yeah. You're not going to get any feeling from worshiping Allah. You're going to get direction. That's what hidayah is. You're going to get direction. Yes. Yeah. The first thing is that how beautiful is Hadith Jibreel? It breaks apart or puts sections off the Sharia so beautifully. If you want to summarize, those who are listening, I've said this many times before, if you want to know how to summarize Islam, if somebody asks you what Islam is, just summarize Hadith Jibreel. Broken in 3 parts and the signs of Yawm al-Qiyamah at the end, right? First, what is Iman? Iman is this, everything that has to do with Aqidah. What is Islam? Everything that has to do with fiqh, right? First, you have acknowledgement of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You have orders and regulations, obeying Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, which is fiqh, how to worship Allah the best of your ability, right? And then the next purpose of the being is to show gratitude, meaning to أَن تَعْبُدَ اللَّهَ كَأَنَّكَ تَرَاهُ. You worship Allah as if you see Him, level 1. فَإِن لَمْ تَكُنْ تَرَاهُ وَعَلَمْ أَنَّهُ يَرَاكَ. كما قال صلى الله عليه وسلم. And if He doesn't see you, or if you don't see Him, know that He sees you, right? Now, all of this doesn't have to do with the feeling. It's about knowing that Allah is your creator and that relationship will always be pure between me and Allah. What do I have to do to get to that stage? I'm not concerned about a feeling. I'm concerned about the feeling in the akhirah.
That's true.
I want to avoid all of that.
That's true.
How do I avoid all of that, right? So one dilemma that we have is that we don't recognize what Allah has given us. What do I mean by that? One interesting thing we were talking about as far as the masjid and people have changed and all that, but one thing that Allah is showing us in this, if you have loved to do salah and talk about Islam, Allah has favored you. Maybe, wallahu alam, this is just a test and the masjids are never going to be the same like they used to. Nothing's ever going to be like the masjid Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam, ever. Yeah. And maybe it is, wallahu alam, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is just telling us, hey, hidayah is with Allah. And those of you who love to pray and talk about Islam, you're favored.
Totally.
Everything else doesn't matter.
Totally. If
there's no masjids in this dunya, if there's a masjid, that doesn't matter to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Yeah. Right? So one thing that we have to do is, as far as you're talking about, I like for tasawwuf, you kind of use it synonymously with psychology, right? It's about how we see the things around us, right? And how we bring those back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Everything. None of this is a coincidence. Yeah. You know, I don't know about you guys. I'm actually learning a lot just in this past hour. And I'm understanding why things are unraveling, you know, mashallah. And we have to be able to see that and to know that when you do remember Allah, it doesn't mean just remember Him, right? The dhikr means that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, your creator, nothing else is there except for Allah, and He is the number one priority. No matter what you feel, whether it's pain or happiness, as long as Allah is happy, that's all that matters, right? And as far as salah is concerned, the only thing that I got my children to pray, my 5-year-old is super energetic. But when it comes to thanks, because we taught him how important thanks is, and he doesn't want to pray with us, I say, do you want to thank Allah? Of course. Isn't it rude not to thank? Then he's ready to pray. Nothing else worked for him. Threatening him, timeouts, none of that worked. It was all about thanks. And that is the essence of tasawwuf, or tazkiyat al-nafs, or a'mal al-qulub, or purification of the soul. It's about recognizing Allah and thanking Allah and putting everything that you have. It's not a coincidence. It's from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, right?
It's that common decency
Yeah.
that people have. They can recognize it with people. They need now to extend that to Allah ta'ala, right? Extending that common decency. And when you talked about the fiqh element, I always feel that there cannot be really a division between tasawwuf and fiqh, even though there is. But fiqh is the beginning of sakina, and I'll explain why. If you want the first step to sakina, it's a sacred law, right? Or you can say start with aqeedah, basic things about rizq, the belief in Allah as a razzaq, right? He's the sustainer. He'll give you your money will come. It calms you down. He's in charge of everything. All right, your boss, whether he's angry or not angry, whether justified or not justified, Allah is above him. So that's aqeedah, giving you sakina. Sharia gives us, sacred law gives us sakina too, in that when relationships are sound and good, right, stress is relieved. I recently came upon a situation where an individual, a sister, her parents were not being taken care of, right? Well, whose job is to take care of the parents? Financially speaking, is the brother first, the son. Elderly parents, who takes care of them? The son or the daughter? The son, right? Well, he wasn't doing his job. So now there's a double burden on the woman, right? So she's so stressed out. And this is a simple example where the sacred law would have relieved her of this stress, this financial stress, right? These are so many little examples, right, of how the sacred law relieves people's stress and brings sakina. How about not visiting? Let's say I went to knock on Maheen's house and visit him, and he's not home. And his wife says, well, he'll be home in 10 minutes, all right? We'll say, okay, I'll just have a cup of tea and wait in the living room. And Maheen walks in and finds me sitting at the living room with his wife.
He should beat you both.
Yeah. So what is he going to have? Someone say, oh, how could you doubt your wife? No, Sharia doesn't come to... this rule is made to avoid even the hint of a doubt.
Yeah.
Right? Suspicion is removed.
But besides that...
Things like that.
If it's reversed...
Yeah, take this.
If that scenario was reversed and it's like a wife comes home and she finds her friend in the house with her husband, nobody's going to go, oh, how could you doubt your husband? Yeah, exactly. So save that. That's nonsense, number one. I'll give you another really practical example I thought of, Sheikh, when you were talking about that. And this is something that, inshallah, will benefit especially the youth. Say you see something that you really, really desire, right? Obviously, if you're a young unmarried person, or a married person sometimes, it's going to be someone of the opposite sex, right? So you see this, what are you going to do? Well, the Sharia already taught you can't take certain actions. So you have to have patience with that. And then your Aqidah teaches you that, in fact, if you obey Allah and fulfill your duties and don't commit sins, then on the Day of Judgment you have the reward of anything. So just postpone that. Yeah. So you can say, I really want to, or whatever it is, right? I really want to do something wrong in my job so I can make more money, steal from my clients so I can buy this car. But then if you have the basis already there of Aqidah and fiqh, you go, well, I can't do it's haram. And on the Day of Judgment, the Muslim is rewarded with whatever he wants and whatever he desires. So I'll just do my business halal and honestly, and I'll trust in Allah for a reward on the Day of Judgment. And there's your practical tasawwuf already.
I want to ask a question, kind of back to the whole boredom and like learning institutions and stuff like that. So we're in a WhatsApp group today, right? And it's kind of we're noticing that there's a program going on in Chicago. And the sisters, it's our Mad Mamluks group, so we have some women volunteers and whatnot. And they're like, oh, we can only see the wall. Because, like, Chicago is, like, certain parts of Chicago, like, is very conservative, where when the Mashayikh have a dars, the sisters aren't going to see them. There's going to be, like, a barrier all the way through.
Don't they have TVs, though?
I don't think the TV is working. Or the TV facing the wrong way. It was facing, their TV was angled towards the wall, so they got a video feed of the wall. So, but like at the same time, could you say there's like some kind of wisdom in there that actually is better training for them? Because if I'm looking at the sheikh, I'm probably like distracted by his beard or his thobe, and or his green eyes or something.
No, for
you know what I'm
women,
saying?
It'll be more about his oratory skills.
Okay, so, but they're hung up on the fact that they're just seeing a wall, so I can't really learn this institution because, the knowledge is good, but it's not engaging because I can't even engage with the instructor.
Sheikh, I'm going to pass you the mic, but just quickly, I remember a long time ago somebody said that about a masjid up north in North Jersey, that the women's section was blocked off and you couldn't even see the imam. And I was like, what? Unless you're 6'2" or praying in the front row, you're not going to see the imam anyway. What are you complaining about?
Here's my take on the issue of barriers. It's based on my personal opinion and experience, and also what I've heard for feedback from women, right, sisters. The number one is the idea that it's not necessarily about seeing the person, but it's about the ability to ask a question.
Yeah,
that's totally valid, right? To me, it's
very
totally
important.
valid.
Yeah.
Secondly, it's about a secondary reality that happens when there are these barriers. Many times, some people imagine that the barrier is also a sound barrier, right? Or that they make there's a lot of noise. So when you have a barrier, like let's say a barrier, or women are in another room, there are some women in there, right, who make a lot of noise, and as a result, it's a place of chaos. So the one who actually wants to study can't study, not because they can't see the person, but because
of the social gathering that they're in now.
Yeah, the room changes. Yeah. So that's the second thing. My personal thing is, whenever I listen to something and try to benefit from something Islamic, if it's let's say it's a long video and it's really good, I always download it, all right, and swap it into an MP3, because if it's just audio, I personally benefit a lot better when it's just audio.
Yeah.
All right. For some, just that, and I take notes like with my hands, or open up a thing and take notes on it. That's just me personally, right? So I think that's really where it comes from. If the frustration might be the feeling that, can I ask a question? How am I supposed to raise my hand? How am I supposed to get a clarification? So if that thing could be solved, that's needed in education, right?
I just want to jump in and say that the sheikh that I've learned the absolute most for, I mean, like, more than 70% of what's valuable in terms of what I know. I had never even seen his face. There's not even a picture of him anywhere. Oh. And all I did was listen to audios until one day I finally was able to sit down and meet him. And I just have to, by then most of it had already been imparted. So, and I couldn't ask questions either because they were recorded lessons. But the benefit of those lessons was tremendous, and it far exceeded almost everything else that I've ever done, even in person with people. So,
see, just the past tirade I gave, I just want to have a clarification. That's not to downplay the fact that there are masajid where women literally can't hear what men can hear,
or there's no women's section,
or there is no women's section, or that there is clearly an unfair, like very clearly unfair, like, representation for men and not for women. That my tirade wasn't about that. Mine is about both genders. This idea of, like, sensory learning, that it has to happen, right? When it comes to having equal access to learning, I mean, that's valid for both genders.
And another point has to do with urf, I guess you could call it urf, is that when you have a masjid or a center, like you said, the Hanafis, they want to push the envelope to see, or not push the envelope, but see what are the limits of what's forbidden and obligatory. So in that respect, when we have a center, how are you going to accommodate for people who are devoted greatly? You're going to accommodate for people who are just became Muslim, right? So therefore, you go at the pace of the slowest. The perspective that I take is, I go at the pace of the slowest. So I would look at how would a totally new Muslim, right, or a non-Muslim if they will walk into the place, I would want them to be completely comfortable. That's my take. So I would base upon their customs, right? I would go upon their customs. I want to make sure that they are going to come into the masjid and not feel that this is some foreign place. And just by the physical environment, right, they want to leave. Well, that's really bad. That's my take on it, personally, is that I want to go at the pace that even the non-Muslims coming to check out the place, okay, will feel like this is not so bizarre. That's my personal take. I want to make sure that people could bring their non-Muslim parents, right, and not have to give them like a precursor lecture just about what the space looks like. Well, we need to get to the doctrine and the content, right? And we need to make them put them. That's my personal take on things.
Mashallah, yeah.
Amir Khan, what is this? Who's Amir Khan? Is the boxer? Amir Khan of English apologized for calling Caitlyn Jenner. Oh, he called her Bruce. He still has pesky pronoun issues.
Called him Bruce. It's a dude. Her it. He was a man for 70 years. Whoa.
You just triggered him. He gets uncomfortable when people don't use proper.
We gotta use some proper pronouns there, brother.
He got scared for a second. You should have seen the eyes open up of Elias.
Men do not want
How many
Bruce
pronouns
anymore.
are there, though?
Too bad.
He belongs in his own category called it.
Wait, you guys realize he's sleepy right now, but now he's getting energy, so you guys see the goofiest side of him right now. I know him very well. Everything's be sarcasm till tonight.
We will not take him back. He made his choice.
This is like the Chappelle draft.
The racial draft.
Yeah. Gender draft.
Sim is very progressive. He believes in he believes in a third gender.
No, I believe in a washroom where you have to go outside into the bushes for that type of whatever he is. Just go,
whatever
take
he is.
care of it. What you got to do in the forest. Come back and join civilization.
There's a lawsuit. It's still pending appeal in Philadelphia. It's a young girl actually at a school filed a lawsuit. That they passed an ordinance or a law forcing the schools to accept.
Look at this comment.
Oh, somebody left a comment on that article about Amir Khan that just says Bruce. So anyway, they had a law where the school had to let people go to the locker rooms and bathrooms of whatever gender they claimed, and this girl filed a lawsuit against the school district saying this is insane. I don't want boys walking into our locker room while I'm getting changed for gym.
Of course.
It's nonsense.
Of course.
So that's still working its way through the courts, but this is like a real concern. It's not the bathroom, by the way. It's not the bathroom. Sure, you go to the bathroom, you lock the stall, whatever, nobody's looking, everybody does their business. It's not that place. But the locker rooms, especially in a high school, you can't let the boys near that locker room.
No,
are you
what
crazy?
bothers me is even yes, that's of course something that would terrify any, especially as a father of 3 daughters. It's just terrifying. But what really terrifies me, at least in terms of competition for women who have to compete against men who consider themselves women now.
No, that happened in Connecticut.
Yeah, like they're destroying every female record out there. They're beating all the other female that are in their respective sports.
One guy it was boxing, I think, or some
wrestling.
He knocked her out. Knocked her out cold.
Well, and just the high school state championships in Connecticut this year, the 100-yard dash and then some other short race. Both of them were won by boys. Like they finished 1 and 2 in those races. It's just males who say that they identify as females, and they just smoked the competition. Of course, they're bigger, they're faster, they have more muscle mass. There's no question about this.
Yeah.
There's also
the comments on this TMZ article are.
Hold on. We're gonna stop it right here and move on because TMZ, I'm not entertained.
Mainly, I don't even know what the background of TMZ because I don't follow this stuff. But they're mainly against this nonsense.
Of course,
right?
No, people are normal.
People are normal.
This is the media pushing it.
Yeah,
and they're totally like, well, why are you apologizing? His chromosomes are still a male chromosome.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. By the way, just remember when Kevin Hart, there was a Sony emails got hacked or whatever.
Yeah.
One of the things that came out besides the big Kevin Hart thing or whatever it was,
I missed that one. What was it? What did they say about Kevin Hart?
They were talking bad about him because of the way he was negotiating his deals or whatever. Okay. But one of the other big things that came out that wasn't talked about, one of the other things that wasn't big but it should have been, is that they had planning meetings at Sony Pictures about how they're going to promote Israel in the coming year. Like, this is something that the executives sit down and talk about.
Yeah.
And they exchanged emails about it. It's not a conspiracy. Yeah. They're available. Very similarly, people in Hollywood have admitted that at some point they were like, we really have to change attitudes about gay people because there's so many of us that are gay, so we're just going to push it in the media. And this is all that you're seeing. Normal Americans don't buy into this stuff. Some of the kids do because they're stupid and they don't know.
And I think that even
I got to hang out in New Jersey a little longer.
Even the LGBT crowd, once things get really, they've talked about this. I'm not even talking about this. Their senior members have talked about this. That the new generation.
Yeah, I remember that. No,
of the LGBT lobby.
The older
what is that?
The older homosexuals, right?
It's not even LGBT anymore.
No, you know what they're saying? But what they're saying is the new generation's too cushy. They're way too much support. They're not fiery enough, and we can't trust them with the movement. They're too cushy. They're too fuzzy.
And then there's that
right?
you mentioned.
They're too fluffy. So the elders were so strong. Yeah, exactly. What's that?
No, you brought up something, man. Go ahead. You said something really interesting.
Oh, yeah. Sorry. What I was saying is that there's been already a trouble brewing between like radical feminists, which are the women from the 70s, right? So like Jermaine Greer and them, and transgender, because these women say, listen, fine, I accept you as whatever you claim you are, but don't tell me that you lived 40 years as a man and you know what it's like to be a woman because you didn't go through puberty as a girl. You didn't have that experience of being, feeling uncomfortable and feeling endangered around men as you were a young woman. Legitimate complaints that women in the West and in the Muslim world increasingly, unfortunately, have. And all the other experiences of being a woman, right? You didn't have any of this. You're not going to go through menopause one day unless you stop taking your hormones.
You know what the reply to that is? Sorry, Sheikh. What they said is that the reason why it was more difficult for me is I was a woman the whole time. And I had to fight it and put on a shell. Gosh. No, that's one thing. So my life is a lot harder. Coming out was a lot harder, and becoming transgender was. The other thing that is between there's a
it's
group
actually
of
quite clever.
Clever
response.
Yeah. Well,
it is
clever for crazy people.
Well, let me
even the homosexuals and transsexuals. There's even a rift between them because
especially the lesbians.
Even the guys, they're like, dude, just because you're gay doesn't mean you have to become the other gender. You're making this into as if we all want to be women. And then we don't want to be women. We just like the same sex.
And then there's the other thing where these lesbians, because it's something chaotic, like 90% of people who say they're transgender don't have genital altering surgery.
They don't.
So 9 out of 10 guys who are going around looking like women, right, or claiming that they're women, they still have penises.
Yeah.
So
thank you.
Lesbians are like, we don't want to date you, and it doesn't make us transphobic. We like women with women parts, and so we just don't want to date you. That's all there is to it, right?
Here.
Yeah, we need a gender bell
here. We need to ring that.
Ring that bell.
So we have a gender bell.
Or here, this is better.
What's the gender bell?
Every time we talk about transgender issues, the bell gets wrong.
Wow.
So anyway, long story short is, there's a big rift among the weirdos and the like totally insane.
Yeah. And let me tell you something else that I also read is that the biggest gay obstacle for gay marriage now, according to some of these senior members, is not it's not a law, right? It's not a law. It's not people, because no one wants to touch this up. No one could say anything, so no one's saying anything. So guess what he said? It is, you won't believe this. I couldn't believe this when I read it. Right? He said, our own community, they lost interest in it. It's like, okay, we got it. But they would actually, when push comes to shove, not lock themselves in a monogamous relationship, right? So it's actually, they're viewing it as something that they got everyone to do, but the reality of the push behind it, right? And again, that's his perspective, is that it was more that we didn't like that people disallowed it more so than we actually wanted to do it.
That's correct.
I mean,
because gay people are very promiscuous. They have a lot of sex outside marriage. So why did they even want the institution of marriage? It was just a way to say
they wanted to win.
I mean,
a battle to win, a fight to win.
See, the thing is, the homosexuality thing has been around for a while, right? It's more propagated now, but homosexuals have existed. the LGBTQRSTUVWXYZ. This thing,
There's
this
a P
thing,
at the end, though.
yeah.
Going to be soon.
There's more actually.
What is
It's
P
like-
for?
It's linked to something that
Animist
that
or-
pedophilia, something that has to do with-
Pedosexual?
Yes, pedosexual.
Pedophile, which is a love of children.
Yeah.
So the transgender thing is
legitimate.
absolutely ridiculous, and we've like destroyed this topic over and over and over and over again. But like, it's really absurd to me that if you're going to just be transgender and pick a gender or whatever, and you just feel like a man or a woman, why limit it only to two genders? Why not be anything then? Why not just say that you're a toaster or you're like you're a car? I'm attracted to horses now, so I'm like I like horses, or I like it just seems ridiculous to me that there is no, because this is why, and you define your whole identity.
No,
I saw a
based
chick
on
on
sex.
YouTube.
There's no bottom to the pit.
Yeah.
No ceiling,
I
because they're
saw
not going up; they're going down.
I saw this chick on
There's no
YouTube,
bottom
right?
to the
She
pit.
identifies as a cat. Right?
Yeah, I mean,
so she got makeup. She wears the little bunnies, and she like spends her day like perched up on the window stool and purrs.
So,
And then when
does
she
she
sees
want
dogs in
people?
public?
Does she want people to pet her?
I don't. Yeah,
Yeah,
she's
yeah,
like
she
17,
does.
18 years
A
old.
litter box.
There's another one about dogs too. It's like two people. They the one guy just wants to be a dog, and he's in a homosexual relationship. So the one guy is actually a dog, and the other guy's his master, and they have like this homosexual.
Whoa.
Sorry, bro. You just painted too much gruesomeness. Hamza's not very happy with this podcast. He's like, what did I get?
No, so
This is like faggotry to the next level.
By the way, what was the topic for this session?
Tasawwuf and like the importance of tasawwuf.
That's what I was thinking. I had like something ready I was talking about, but it's going farther and farther away. I was like, I ain't talking about the soul now. Forget this, dude. No, this is a nice roundtable, though.
Hey, listen,
I tried to talk about the soul with the kidney beans, but you guys just like.
Hey, listen, we didn't touch the topic of LGBT and transgender for a while. I think you just need to dust it off. That's all. Every 7 months, every 6 months. Now, maybe once a year, just dust off the topic of Shiism and transgender. Well, also, you have new listeners. Right?
They're on the same.
Because listen, Alex talked about Shiism right now, and then we brought up the subject of transgender and LGBT again, right? So people, because you have new listeners, right? And they got to know, and
gotta know how we really feel about
once a year, look,
how you really feel.
the Abbasid Khalifa, once a year, he would send the army off to the north. The next spring, he'd send the army down to the south. Just to have a skirmish to let the neighbors know we're here, right? So every once in a while, because we don't want to become too.
Every once in a while, park in your neighbor's driveway. let them know what's up.
Let them know you're there.
I don't mess around, man.
Why
So
are you
this
parking
is-
my driveway, man? Just to let you know I'm here.
Just to let you know what's up.
This is not a topic we bring up all the time, but at this point, we're at the level of maintenance. Once a year, you bring it up for 10 minutes. Okay? 10 minutes for any new listeners that didn't know our position. Right?
Yeah, some people might have gotten confused because we got some recent guests that they said, "Oh, Mad Mamluks sold out and became liberals."
Because season 2 for us.
people are going to be like, okay.
Listen, season 2 for us didn't touch the subject pretty much all season. Right? So
Every time I try to bring it up, Moeen would be like, "Come on, man."
Yeah, enough. No, so I just want to make sure so people don't think that we backtrack to be politically correct for some reason or whatever. We did.
You're helping the lack of desensitization
Exactly.
of the Muslims
Exactly.
to this whole issue.
They should not be desensitized to the issue. If you're a Muslim, you cannot support these types of things, right? وَتَعَاوَنُوا عَلَى الْبِرِّ وَالتَّقْوَى وَلَا تَعَاوَنُوا عَلَى الْإِثْمِ وَالْعُدْوَانِ. So just as a FYI, to dust off that verse of Quran that we could live by it, we're not saying go and beat them. We're not saying go and do all these bad things to them. We're saying leave them alone.
Just
right?
don't be submissive to them.
And do not submit to this liberal zeitgeist that wants you to accept and apologize for not following their thing. All right, so that's all it is. Yeah. And we're at maintenance level, and we just dusted it off. Now we can move to the next subject.
My only problem with it, to be honest, is I mean people want to people do whatever they want, right? No, I'm moving on to the subject. As a general rule, whenever we have Muslims in the public who walk around and they're like completely like they're just compliant with whatever it is, right? I mean, practically anything. It's gotten to the point where we have these MLI people who are walking around like a two-state solution, where the Palestinian state barely exists, and like people are just anything to fit in, right? It's anything to fit in. they're not making sincere arguments that this is from the Deen.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody's walking around like sincerely saying, "Oh, you know, whatever kind of deviance is du jour," right?
CVE pays these people, right? A
yes,
lot of
for
these
sure.
people. I could say,
For sure.
in general, they
Yeah.
do dish out money for
So,
this type of stuff.
I just want to. I just like making it clear that the real position of the average Muslim, which is what I am, right?
Yeah.
And this is one of the things that I think is one of the reasons, besides the fact that Dr. Shaggy, if he tells me to do something, I'll just do it. One of the other reasons that I think it's useful for people like me who aren't scholars or students or anything like that to be on is that the average Muslim can know his religion and
Just
stand
know
firm
your
on it.
religion. Look,
As long as you have contact with ulama, you can be an average, regular, everyday Muslim who works and watches TV and still care about your religion and be firm on it.
And he should know very well that this is the position. You know that you say it at home, right? You know that you say it at home. You know that you say it within yourself. And now you got 7 guys in a table saying it in public, so that you shouldn't be afraid. You shouldn't be worried. And the liberals, they like us too, because we are doing freedom of speech. We're upholding their principle. This is our freedom of speech, right? So they should welcome us too, and they should support us. They should be supporting us because this is our freedom of speech. So we accept support. We expect support from them. We expect them to support our position that ta'awun al-birri wa taqwa, right? That we as Muslims only can support something that Allah Ta'ala and His Messenger have sponsored, and we cannot, or have taught, have gave us, and we cannot support the opposite of that. So we expect you, and we thank you in advance for supporting our right to do this.
And rights are only preserved when exercised.
Well, that's
There's a Christian soccer player. She's played on the national team before. She plays down in North Carolina, I think. And when she got called up to play on an international game for the national team, but it was Pride Month and they were gonna have rainbow numbers on their jerseys, so she declined. And she didn't make a big deal. She said,
what team?
I really
What team?
can't.
What country?
U.S.
U.S. team. Okay.
So she declined.
Cool.
Now they're going back to play another tournament this year. That was like a year ago, and they called her up again.
Oh,
So
yeah.
they didn't ban her
Because her quality,
And
they're playing.
And the coach of the team is open lesbian.
Wow.
Right, but they didn't. So
And,
if you exercise your rights, things will.
And not only that, we expect your gratitude. We expect you to thank us and support us in not supporting you.
Yes.
Right? Does this make logical sense? Right?
It makes
Because
a little too
this
much sense
identity,
here.
it's a negative identity. It's something I can't do.
Yeah.
So you expect support for what you can do. We're telling you, you're also going to support us in a negative identity, something I cannot do.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, this makes total sense to me.
Yeah.
I'm not bashing you people. I'm not saying anything about you. I'm just not going to lend my support to certain things. I'm not lending my support to the State of Israel, for example. Okay? I'm not lending my support to Ecuador. I have nothing for them or against them, right? I have the right to not lend support to whoever I don't want to lend support. So I expect that to be enshrined in your identity thing.
Yeah,
Okay?
I mean, this is
in your
something,
thing of identity.
This is something
negative
everybody in
identity.
America should understand intuitively as well, because freedom of association is also freedom from association.
That's true.
Right? So I can choose to associate and support certain people. I can also choose not to associate and support certain people. And that's a fundamental right that we have here. So
And by the way, I actually think these things are going to die off by themselves. You don't even waste your breath on them. But if the subject has to come up, then again, very simply, this is my negative identity, which I thank you in advance for recognizing. Right?
So I think we should wrap up, but we'll do one small little topic before we do wrap up, since Dr. Shelley wanted to touch on it as well, which is and it's a complete divergence from the last piece, alhamdulillah, so we can wrap that up. Let me ring this sucker one more time, because and then we wanted to talk about, since it's marriage season, I know Dr. Shelley wanted to talk about the topic of marriage. I think we strayed too far from tasawwuf, so I'm not going to go back to that after.
Makes sense.
Listen to the finale from season 2 podcast, which was the importance of tasawwuf with Mufti Niyaz and Yusuf, that we covered. So we covered that in good detail there.
Yeah.
But yeah, the topic of marriage.
A lot of people getting married these days, so it's sort of in the air. Everyone's talking about it, thinking about it, and how important it is. And if you look at the Anbiya, they're always described with their wives. Like many times they're described with their wives. And in the first relationship that Adam alayhi salam had was not the relationship with a mother or a father. Allah could have created him and then created a mother for him, right? It's possible. Allah could do what he wants. But, or could created for him a son, or created something else, or a brother. Allah could have created from his rib a brother to show the sibling. But no, the most important relationship is a person and their spouse, right? And to be honest, a person should not even should know what upsets them. And in I know that in Maliki fiqh and in the Quran and general decency, the level is upsetting. Like, you should not upset them; they should be happy, right? Allah Ta'ala says about marriages, sakina, right? So if they're not in a state of sakina, right, and you should do everything within the bounds that is not forbidden, right, to make sure that they're living a happy life. Right, as long as they're not making halal haram and haram halal, as the Prophet ﷺ said, then we negotiate. So, just a general piece of advice for that. And people, when they do get married, they have to learn how to share their emotions, share their wealth, share their food, share everything, right? And a lot of time, and share their time. And if she likes something that you don't like, then you learn to like it, right? And she learns to like what you like, at least to tolerate it. So allow you to do your thing and he her thing. It's really important for people to get along. Really important. I would say one of the proofs of Islam, if we do it right, that we should have considerably lower divorce rates.
Right.
And it's going to happen. It happened to the Sahaba. We're not saying that it's like you're committing some, but really, considerably, it should be less.
Yeah, well, here's the problem that.
And add to that abuse.
It's 50%. I think among my immediate family or friends circle, there's at least 7 divorces that happened within the last year. So, I mean, that is an incredibly high number that's happening, and at a very alarming. What's so scary, it's not just the divorce itself, it's the damage that happens to children during the divorce, especially if you have young ones who are seeing fights or all the damage that comes as a result of the divorce. Parents or fathers not being for their daughters or mothers not being there for their sons. The time that's torn apart. All these different things that are coming into play. And it's raising a whole generation of damaged children who can possibly, go into the different sections of society where you've seen some of the studies that are related to homosexuality, that they say that because their parents didn't have a good healthy relationship, they ended up choosing the same gender as their sexuality. And these are some things that parents need to consider before they even decide on divorce. I think divorce is being given a much more easier route than it should. People are giving it a pass as if like it's something natural, and it shouldn't be. I think there's a lot of voices that are occurring in the media where people are just saying, oh, it's a normal thing, and making it a very light thing that it happens to everyone, when it's not. It's actually, just as Dr. Shadi said, this is the relationship that mankind started on, the man and the woman, and you need to do your damnedest to make sure that works. And it has to be things that I would argue, if there's things that you are feeling very, you should put down some of the wishes that you had just to keep the preservation of the family.
Yeah. I mean, the reason for the high divorce rates, I mean, I think you could probably have an entire 6-hour session on what the reasons are, but I think there's a tying link between a bunch of the topics that we talked about today, which is sort of this emergence of the individual versus the group, right? And on top of the individual, right? It's the importance of the person, my life, my things, my stuff, right? It's all about me, this independence that I have, the self-independence, and on top of this, the pummeling of sexuality and pornography, and the idea that you don't need your nuclear family anymore, that you don't need. So it's
marriage
not,
is at an all-time low now.
Yeah, it's not just I don't actually place the blame on individuals, right, and couples and marriages, right? It's the same thing as the masjid, right? The blame isn't the masjid. I would blame the environment and the things that are happening outside. So the question is, how do married couples shield themselves from the impact of this like onslaught that's coming both from like technology, society, people, the times, right? So it's tough. Like I think it's not just, the answer isn't like, oh, you know, just be patient, right? You can be patient. How are you going to be patient when there's like, you know, like an onslaught of things? An example I brought up in previous podcasts is like this onslaught of technology, right? And the same applies for marriage, right? That back in the day when, you know, like Graham Bell made the phone, right? And you had a phone in your house. You could pick up the phone if you wanted to and call somebody. You could, when you got a phone call, you could decide to pick it up if you wanted to. If you didn't want to, you didn't have to. Now, when you're on your cell phone 24 hours of the day, 365 days a year, there are social scientists and UX designers and product designers and psychologists and sociologists and anthropologists who are sitting there behind your screens knowing exactly what moves you're going to make, making sure that you pick up that phone. And in the same way, right, there's this onslaught on marriage, on family, on the individual, right, which is, you know, forcing these values of society on you, right? So that's so I don't think it's just you know, people.
So as far as like divorce, Sim like brought up the concept of the damaging effects of divorce. I remember when Sim and I came back in January and we were just talking to Dr. Shadi, and I think you said something like really that profound, was that like our parents were never selfish enough to even consider like the thought crossed in their mind of being like getting divorced. But the thing is that I've met brothers now who are single and they're having issues, and I've been telling them like you don't have kids yet.
Issues?
Like, you know, like, okay, do you guys remember the Daniel Hakikachu post from a couple weeks ago?
Which one?
He was talking about the like how the brother was being belittled constantly.
What? Why was that?
By his wife, because he had lost his job and that.
Some of the listeners didn't read it, so maybe you want to read it or give it a summary.
Yeah, I remember the summary. The summary is he was talking about somebody he knew who worked really hard, married a young woman whose father did okay. So, you know, she claimed she was studying with shuyukh who were teaching her about how important it is to honor the Muslim woman and how women have rights and how our rights have to be honored. And among those rights is that they have to be maintained in the status that they came from, and that it's the responsibility of the man, etc. And
she doesn't have to clean the house and cook or anything.
Right, and she doesn't have to have responsibilities at home like cooking, cleaning, and all of that stuff. So it's kind of like pulling from all the different madahib, whatever is most favorable to one party and whatever is less favorable to the male party, right? Maybe because they think that men have had too much of the opposite for too long, and they've had this, you know, advantage or, you know, whatever it is. So the long and the story is that this woman took advantage of that type of learning. She wasn't like somebody that didn't study. She actually studied all the time and went to halakas that the husband was obligated to pay for, and travel and hotels and all that. And eventually one day he lost his job, and she came from money and had a high income anyway, right? That she never contributed to the home. So she was like, all right, well, I'll help out while you're trying to get another job where you can support us in the style that I think is obligatory. But I'm going to just remind you every day that you're not a real man because you're not doing this for me, and I'm having to contribute, and, you know, just like belittling the guy. Eventually they got divorced. The long and the short of it is
where's the love?
This is right. Number one,
goes
don't claim your
ways.
rights. Number one, don't claim your rights. Rather, seek to fulfill the rights of your partner, and hope that Allah will bless you with someone who does the same to you. Number two, you can't just read these things in the light most favorable to the party that you think has been oppressed over time. This is the whole concept of behind. Well, some people are underprivileged, and some people come in with privilege, and so we have to make the balance the other way, even if it means exaggerating certain positions, right? The other thing is, for sure, there are Islamic speakers that are appealing to women, and especially because of this. This is their job. This is what they're doing. This is their whole game, right? Their whole pitch is, I'm the feminist imam, right? I look like a man and I have a beard and I studied Islam, which is so patriarchal, but I'm going to liberate you from the patriarchy of this religion from within the religion. Feminist readings of Islam, right? Yeah. And then the other thing is, there's no love, no rahmah either, right?
Where's the love of rahmah? And that stuff got to go both ways. And in the past, the idea of just such a quick divorce, it didn't come on people's mind for another reason, which is basically you couldn't. Like economically, it was impossible.
Well, just to finish this off, Sheikh, and I don't know if Daniel touched on it, but the one thing that that brother should have done has been like, I can't afford to support you the way that you think is necessary. So, alhamdulillah, you can make a choice. You can either shut up about it, or you can go back to your father who can support you in that way. I hate to lose you, and this is not a divorce that, you're not thinking about it, and you're not. This is a situation in which you go, look, you can't have it both ways. Either you can accept what I'm offering, even if you have a right. You have a right. Go fulfill it somewhere else.
Move into an apartment.
Yeah. I can't fulfill your rights the way you think. So you could divorce me, and I won't ask you for the mahr back. Go.
There's a brother who approached me. He's like I'm kind of doing the same situation, but no kids. And I didn't tell him. I just listened to him, and then I was like, and I was thinking should I tell? Cause I was like, in my mind though, as I was driving away, I was like, I should just tell him to cut his losses. Like, he's got no kids. It might be time to make the break. I don't know. Like, sometimes when you get into the kid situation, you have situations where then you're on.
Yeah, you really don't want.
Then you're cuffed. I know a person who I think they had 3 or 4 kids, and on the flip side, they get divorced for the dumbest. There's no infidelity. There's no beating going on, but it's you find out, they were disrespectful to my parents. I'm like, well, that's all subjective. Like, how my spouse treats my parents is you're gonna be biased towards that, right? So it's like, but at the same time, you left 15. You got a 15-year-old son, and your youngest is 3.
Yeah,
and then you got a train wreck.
I mean, I don't know how many sisters you're advising in this regard, but if you're advising brothers, one thing before moving to the divorce, before going, that's it, I'm out, is try something that I'm sure a lot of Muslim men, or any men in the West, but Muslim men I know aren't trying, which is be a man, right? Like, come home and be like, look, this is I'm Rabul Bayt. This is my house. We're gonna just do things according to I'm the emir, and we're just gonna have one decision maker here. I'll pray istikhara on anything that comes up, and we'll see how it works. And that might solve all the problems, including whatever allegedly she's complaining about. She might just be complaining that she's not married to a man.
Oh, you're saying that's actually. I've actually seen someone told me
society teaches women no, you have to be equal, and it's not the fitrah. So she's going to be dissatisfied and not even know why.
I actually had a brother tell me that the reason that his wife divorced him was that the lack of initiative. He never took initiative, and she would tell him, control the situation, right? And he can't control the situation.
As he was saying, Daniel's post, as you were narrating it, I was getting mad at the guy, not at the girl. I wanted to smack him. I'm like, what's wrong with you? How did you allow things to escalate to the point that it did, where your wife is just insulting you openly like that?
Exactly.
How dare you? You don't, as a man, you don't insult your wife like that daily.
Right.
You don't rub some misery that he's or she's experiencing on a daily basis in front of your face. Where's your grapefruit size? When they're nowhere. You've been castrated.
I mean,
and this
true,
isn't
right?
even to say that in the past women were stuck in horrible marriages. I've seen it myself. Some relatives that we had, it was like hellfire.
And they're just keeping it going
because they have no choice. Financially, she can't.
Yeah.
So
we don't
sympathize. Of course, we sympathize with that. We have aunts that have like that. Your mom could have been like that.
I mean, we're not Catholic. We don't have this rule where you can't get divorced or you're excommunicated.
So it really just the rahmah has to go both ways.
And people have to try everything, including being normal.
And not only try everything. Sorry, just if I can just add on to this, is that one thing that we undermine, and I know it's probably a broken record, is I believe everyone should get premarital counseling before they get married. Not only premarital counseling, just get counseling after you're married too. It keeps everything a lot easier. And the wisdom behind that is, you think you know your partner or women, but it's not the same after you're married. It's a completely different. You are going to know your wife better than anybody in the world. Your wife's going to know you better than anybody in the world. You're going to know her better than her parents, and she's going to know you better than your parents. Yeah. And you have to know how different of a species we actually are, a male and a female. We're very different. We have to understand each other. Yeah. And if a man turns away when he's arguing with his wife and goes, I don't want to take this anymore, it's not like he's actually belittling his wife. He doesn't want to escalate to something else, so he needs some cave time.
So he doesn't
needs
make
to
a
get away.
mistake. Yeah.
He needs to get
He
away.
can
He's
make a
doing it
mistake.
because he loves her.
Because normally
Right?
people who talk to me like that,
It's gonna when it escalates on the man's side, it's ugly.
It is,
so
and
he's
we don't
better
want it
off
to go there.
By the way, we have the
Jordan
Sahaba.
Peterson talks about that.
The Sahaba said that. The Tabi'in and the Imams. Imam Ahmad ibn Hanbal mentioned about if one of them gets angry, the other stays silent.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And that's how it's supposed to be. Sayyidina Umar ibn Khattab as well. When his wife got angry, he remained silent.
You're right.
So, why? Because if it escalates from the man, it could scar someone for it could scar her for a long time. But if it escalates from the woman's side, the man is expected to have sabr, as Sayyidina Umar taught us.
Yeah.
She was yelling at him from the top of her lungs.
Yeah.
And he said, I should have sabr. Right? She has a lot of sabr in what she does for me. I'm having sabr now when she's
cleans my
releasing.
clothes, she takes care of my house. Why wouldn't I? Let her talk a little bit. That's what he said, right?
Now, because if it escalates from him, it's not a fair battle.
Yeah, but the psychologists
Right?
talk about this also, right? Is that women vent by talking. By nature. It doesn't mean they actually are disrespecting your authority.
Right.
Yeah.
But men don't understand. How dare you talk to me? No, actually, you're still a man if your wife can talk to you like that. But when it comes to halal and haram and the insulting on a regular, that's different. But when a woman is actually venting, it doesn't actually mean she permanently dislikes you.
Yeah.
It's different, you know? And when a man is actually, you know, his attention span, I mean, we're just so different from each other. Yeah. And the next thing is, I mean, especially, you know, this is for women and for daughters also, something very, very important. Rasulullah ﷺ, the way he treated Fatima radiallahu anha is a model of. There's three A's that psychologists refer to as far as relationship, which is attention, appreciation, and affection, right? And Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam showed the best model of that. The Prophet of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the final messenger, the Prophet who we don't even equate the dust on his shoes, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So much honor from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. When his daughter walks inside of the room, he stands up to her, stands up for his daughter. This is Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam we're talking about. The angels have stood up for Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, right? Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam stands up for his daughter, right? He kisses her on her forehead, affection, and tells her, come sit next to me. Appreciation. All three of these in Rasulullah's life, right? And this is the same thing. It has to be coupled, yes, with some type of understanding of halal and haram, but especially for our daughters.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you all, I'm talking about daughters, but if our daughters don't find love and affection through their fathers especially and their mothers, they will fall in love with somebody else that gives them that love because of their emotional starvation that they may be going through. Right?
That's what Imam from Allentown, Sheikh Muhammad Shinawi, he wrote about that for Muslim Matters.
SubhanAllah.
A very important thing on fatherhood. I didn't finish reading the whole thing, but I'm sure that he got to that point.
If she goes, the first guy that says, I love you or shows affection, even if she knows it's haram, she'll fall for him. She didn't get that attention, appreciation, and affection.
It's just
so,
and she won't
so
even be looking for good
I
men
don't
because
want
she doesn't know how to model
Exactly.
That's true.
So I
But
know,
that's what comes back
I know
to
we're
Sheikh
having a
Shadi saying
good
comes like
discussion
parenting,
here,
man.
but Moeen really has to run, and we got to wrap this up. So just quickly on the topic of marriage, because we ended with this, I want to give a shout out to my boy Evan Huff, who's a huge fan of this podcast and who's listening. He got niqahed up today. I told him I couldn't make it because I had obligations to record this podcast. So, alhamdulillah, let's make dua for him and his marriage and
protect him,
pleasing in the eyes of Allah. So, Evan, we love you. So,
I mean,
I don't know you either, brother, but I love you.
Congratulations. And inshallah, we'll wrap up with that. I think it's been a good 5 hours of recording time.
Oh,
so
good.
From the brothers?
Yeah,
final
we'll
words. Let's take a quick go around.
Mad Mamluke's last word, and
I'm not ready to quit. I just had a nap, and I'm ready to go for another few hours.
So you guys can do that episode with Dr. Shadi.
Yeah.
All right.
just call us in. We'll dial in.
I'm beat.
No, you guys, mashallah. I learned a lot from you guys. I'm not just saying that. This was an awesome experience. This is a very, very fun podcast. Or just recordings and chilling. You guys are a nice breath of fresh air, to be honest with you. I like the way that you just don't care about what people think. No, honestly, I love it, dude. I love it. I need more of that. I read a book on the cover that's a little more vulgar than that, but yeah.
The art of not,
the art of not giving.
And you guys have embodied it, mashallah.
There's a bad word.
But may Allah bless you and make everything easy for you guys, man.
First and foremost, Jazakallah khair to all of you for being such wonderful hosts. Special thanks to Dr. Shadi for inviting us and Ilyas picking us up. Everyone just making us feel so welcome here in New Jersey. And, I hope that this is just the first of many amazing things that can come just with us collaborating together and just sharing resources, whatever you guys need. I mean, we're going to be here for you, and we'll give you that commitment. And hopefully, inshallah, you guys can provide us any type of things that we may need. And just every one of you guys, all four of you guys that are sitting in front of me right now, so talented and so well-spoken and everything. Just so impressed with all of you guys. So thank you so much for having us.
Alhamdulillah, you guys have been, mashallah, really easygoing, great to work with. Glad to see, smart people who figured something, a way to contribute, and you guys have contributed really well. May Allah Ta'ala continue to increase your work and continue giving us the honor to be of any service of Deen in any way, shape, and form. And the way forward for us, I think, is we need to save our own souls from the pitfalls of the tests of this life, and the best way to do it is tazawur, which is constant visitation. So we shouldn't see that there's some end goal in sight. The visitation itself is the end goal, and hopefully we owe you the next visit, bidnillah. And for all the audience out there and the listeners and maybe some new listeners that you just maybe got surprised that we actually brought up some subjects, all they have to know is we're not out to get anyone, except we don't want anyone to force our hand or force our tongue to have to say something that we don't believe in. That's all it is, and I don't like to have elephants in the room that you can never talk about, right? So if it came off as that, then you should just understand the basic purpose behind that is to no one likes to be forced, and we don't like to be forced, and we know that the liberal zeitgeist out there is forcing people's hands. No doubt, no question. Every other day, someone's apologizing for something. And no one has to tolerate that. So we're not out to get anyone. We're not trying to attack anyone, but we don't want to be forced. And we should be left alone. And actually, we should be honored and respected, right, for having that negative identity, that identity of not supporting certain things. We expect to be for room to be made for that, right? If it's truly a level playing field for everyone. And the other thing is for the Muslims, anyone that we disagree with. If they fall under the banner of La ilaha illallah Muhammad Rasulullah, then they're our brothers, our sisters, our allies. If they have a perspective that they think maybe we misunderstood something, Allahu Akbar, just let us know. You don't need to be upset, right? You should just come on, send us messages. Allahu Akbar. We're learning. We make mistakes. We have to be humble about these things. And someone who shares the banner of Tawheed, they're more than welcome to constantly to help us understand our own mistakes. If we misunderstood something, misspoke about something, we ask you to have husn al-dhan. So all that is for the unity of the ummah and to unify on something that is objectively clear, that has evidence, right? So with that, those are my closing remarks. And again, thank you for Saad and Moeen and Ilyas taking their time out, being really supportive of this whole collaboration and making it happen. So, Jazakumullah khairan. May Allah Ta'ala all bless all the rest of your weekends. Right, and hope to do this again. Bi'idhnillah. Closing statement from you too.
So, as Dr. Shadi said, I think this was a wonderful experience. I think I learned a lot from you guys as well, alhamdulillah, and I'm looking forward to future collaborations. Inshallah, we'll make a trip out to Chicago, Sharif, one of these days. So thank you, brothers, for joining us and making this a wonderful experience. Please keep us in your dua, and definitely keep in touch.
Just want to thank you, brothers, for coming out. And Panera for giving us a free cookie this morning. And may Allah reward us. And Bismillah.
Saad.
Yeah, again, just want to echo Alhamdulillah, it was a great experience. You guys definitely bring a very much needed perspective to the discussion, and I think everyone, inshallah, has benefited from that. And may Allah increase you guys in your efforts. And once we get out there, maybe we can do this again sometime. So.
الحمد لله رب العالمين اللهم صل وبارك على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم تسليما. اللهم اهدنا فيمن هديت وبارك لنا فيما أعطيت وقنا واصرف عنا شر ما قضيت. ربنا ظلمنا أنفسنا وإن لم تغفر لنا وترحمنا لنكونن من الخاسرين. ربنا عليك توكلنا وإليك أنبنا وإليك المصير. ربنا لا تؤاخذنا إن نسينا أو أخطأنا. ربنا ولا تحمل علينا إصرا كما حملته على الذين من قبلنا. ربنا ولا تحملنا ما لا طاقة لنا به. واعف عنا واغفر لنا وارحمنا أنت مولانا فانصرنا على القوم الكافرين. اللهم حبب إلينا الإيمان وزينه في قلوبنا وكره إلينا الكفر والفسوق والعصيان. اللهم إنا نسألك حبك وحب من يحبك وحب كل عمل يقربنا إلى حبك. وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم تسليما كثيرا طيبا مباركا فيه. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك نشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت نستغفرك ونتوب إليك. والعصر إن الإنسان لفي خسر إلا الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات وتواصوا بالحق وتواصوا بالصبر. والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله.